Okay, what is going on, everybody, and welcome back to the Mets Weekly Podcast, where we are live at this very moment on YouTube and on X to recap this week's Mets versus Pirates series, as well as every single new piece of news, rumors that have been going on the last few days in Mets land, particularly the last 4 days. But before we do that, of course, the usual house cleaning. I want to remind everybody to subscribe to the Mets Weekly YouTube channel if you have not already for this very podcast, which is now recorded live on Sundays and on Thursdays, even though we're live on Monday as of right now, following each series of games. For those of you watching on playback and you want to join the conversation, make sure to turn on those post notifications to know when we go live. Now, for those of you in the live chat as of right now, I want to let you guys know that we love reading your comments, your questions, your concerns, all of that stuff. And if you feel like you're being ignored, you're not. You're just being starred. And throughout the show, we'll try to pull up as many as we can possible to keep the flow of the conversation going. Also, remember to follow Mets Weekly on X and on TikTok, which mainly features our guy right here next to me, his instant reactions after every single Mets game, titled The Mets Frankly Post Game. Also, for our audio listeners, make sure to follow us on every single one of your favorite listening platforms to not miss the audio version of every new episode that goes up at 9 a.m. the following day that this is live. So without further ado, let's get into episode number 64. And as we currently stand, the Mets just came off yet another split of a 4-game series. They went on a 8-game road trip that they finished off just today, 4-4, lots to take away. I'd say there was a lot of outrage after quite a few games, a lot of things that have been going on the last few days, and definitely some tempers being boiling these last few days. And we'll get into all of that. A lot is going on. Frank, you're here. Andrew's not, so it's just the two of us with a new mic. How do you feel going into, let's say, what is it, July 8th right now? That's when we're recording this.
I mean, honestly, when you look at this team splitting back-to-back 4-game sets, being a game under 500, they really are playing like a 500 team. There's some things you like, there's some things you don't like, and that kind of leaves you right in the middle where you are. You're not able to excel and be way over 500, but you're also not bad enough to go on a huge losing streak and be way under 500, like the way they were before they went on the big run. So trying to get a sense of what this team is, where this team is, it's extremely important the month of July when, this is your last chance before the All-Star break to be like, okay, are we the team that we saw in May or are we the team that we saw in June? Little bit of both. So there still are some things that need to be figured out before you decide it's like, okay, are we good enough to actually try to take a spot from these other teams? Because, what's been happening is that San Diego and St. Louis, they're a few games over 500. So you need to be quite a bit better and if you actually do want to take a spot. So just kind of being where you're at, it's not going to get it done. You're just going to kind of be left out of the picture. And if that's the case with how veteran heavy this team is, how old this team is, how many guys are on 1-year deals, you've really got to decide, like, are we actually going to go for this or at least try to get some kind of assets back? So, this is their last chance to kind of show us what we're going to be doing.
Yeah, I mean, there is going to be a lot of deciding factors in the next few weeks. And I think that a lot of Mets fans, they know that there's a lot of pressure coming down onto this team as to where, they don't perform, then things are going to go in a direction that probably are a lot different than maybe, even last year where they sold at the deadline. I mean, there could be a lot of key pieces coming out of here that you probably didn't expect to get traded maybe 2 years ago, or, with this so said change of direction of the franchise of how it has been. There has been talks about a lot of guys getting traded, a lot of guys getting moved, a lot of guys moving on from them. But we haven't really seen it set in stone yet. We've put this out as the wait and see year, kind of a season that they're just kind of putting it all out on the table. They're not going too far in, they're not going too far out, and they're just putting and plugging in some pieces to fill some holes complementary, and kind of trying to win in the margins and being able to kind of like gel as a team and have full team wins. The problem is that you need 26 guys to play competent baseball, and it seems like even though this team's been mediocre, the same problems are continuing to pop up and flare up every single series, every single game. It seems like the same issues are the same issues, whether it is extending the inning because of infield errors or outfield miscues, whether it's the walks, whether it is just the bullpen completely imploding, whether it is just kind of the sequencing or maybe the coaching. There has been quite a few factors that will continue to repeat throughout the entire season so far. And right now we have currently played 89 games. We're halfway through, so we're getting somewhat of a close identity to what this team is. And to how I feel as of right now, it really is just a team that looks like it's stuck in the middle. And even though you do have a lot of pivots that you can obviously move to make the team better going forward, it doesn't seem like the Mets are going to move the needle. They just seem like a team that's just going to hang around. Maybe they get on a hot streak. They did gain a lot of ground. But at some point, this team, for some reason, it always looks like whether you ride the highs or ride the lows, somehow they're going to run out of gas. And that is kind of how it has been, because it's been such a roller coaster of a good/bad April to a horrendous May to a fantastic June to a laboring July. So it really has come to the point in mind, and I'll move it over to you because I know that there's a point that you obviously want to make with the bullpen or areas that this team needs to fix. It doesn't really seem like there's just like one or two guys you can bring in here to fix much of this. And it really isn't, whether it is the key players stepping up or whatever, there's a lot of holes here. And it's really hard to see them contending in this way that, some of them fall out at one point and then at one point they produce. It's a lot of inconsistency, and that's the reason why they're at 500.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what's been bothering me is that you can say, all right, there's arms available. Like, oh, go get old friend David Robertson back, or go get Kirby Yates. He's having a phenomenal year for Texas. Texas is struggling, short-term contract. Sure, that would make the bullpen better. But the issue is what we're seeing right now is on the days where you have Daniel Nunez available, you have Edwin Diaz available, you have Jose Budo available. If the Mets have a lead, there's a pretty good chance they're going to win that game. But on the days where they're shorthanded and they don't have guys available, all of a sudden a team puts up 8 runs. And what happens is that like those guys just aren't there every single day. So let's say you added Robertson, you got him back. Okay, he's available a day or two, and then that day he's not available. What are you going to do? So it's really hard when you have a bullpen where there's maybe 3 guys you trust at right now, because what bothers me is on a day like today, you look at the roster and you say, okay, we know what's going to happen with Christian Scott. We'll get into him in a little bit, but all right, now I need to decide what pitcher I'm going to go in. Do you have any confidence in Jake Diekman?
Yeah, we'll get into him. And
do you have? Yeah, you don't. Okay, great. Do you have confidence in Adam Ottavino?
Absolutely not.
Do you have confidence in the rookie that we saw today?
Not really, no.
Yeah, so that's kind of what the problem is that even the arms that are available, that are rested, you don't trust them. And then even when Reed Garrett is available, do you feel confident when he comes into a game?
No, not at the
It
moment. I
looks
think that
it
they've
looks
killed him
shaky.
at this
It
point.
looks
Yeah.
very shaky. Like you said, I mean, he's going 26 pitches. He's laboring, just barely getting through it. And then the next day, you trot him back out there. I mean, Adrian Hauser, depending on the scenario, maybe you trust him, but
Yeah.
not in a traditional bullpen role, not to piggyback off of a starter right away to get one out. That's been the thing that's driven me crazy this past week is you had a situation where Diekman get one out, can't do it. All right, now the new guy, get one out, can't do it. They do too much damage with the 3-batter minimum rule. It's like, okay, now somebody else bail me out. Like, now let me go to Ottavio, or now let me go to Hauser or whatever. So, again, if you brought in Robertson, who's older, or Yates, who's older, like, there's concerns with those guys. But if you want to give me one of the guys for the Nationals, okay, fine. But there's still going to come a point in time where other guys have got to step up. I mean, you can't be in a scenario where you only have a few guys that you're trusting, because right now, to me, I trust Nunez and kind of Diaz. That's about it right now. It's like maybe Budo, maybe, I don't know yet. It's only been a couple outings, so I'm not going to pencil him in. And again, they need him more in a long relief, middle relief role of working multiple innings. So it's not a guy I could go to in the 9th inning, in the 8th inning. Or, even a scenario like you have a couple runners on base. It's like, now let me go to Budo. Like, that's a scenario he's never been in before. Because like Hauser, these guys aren't traditional relievers. So you can't just use them like that. It's just something they're not used to. But they might have to get used to that, because they need to come up with something. Because what really drives me nuts is that, Pittsburgh, they started all their lefties against Christian Scott. So you're facing these left-hand hitters. You're facing, Brian Reynolds, a switch hitter, but then you have O'Neill Cruz. You have Rowdy Tellez, like all these lefty guys. It's like, okay, you have one lefty in your bullpen. You should be like, oh, go to Diekman. But he's just been so bad that you don't trust him.
Yeah.
So why is he here? That's ultimately what it comes down to, is that, like, if you can't use them in the one scenario where they're supposed to be, like, useful for, like, if he's here to do a job and can't do that job, he shouldn't have the job. I mean, we've said that a million times with a bunch of different things, but like, it's the 5th inning, or the 6th inning. Like, this is not the 9th inning. This isn't the 8th inning. Like, if he can't come into a game in the 6th inning, he shouldn't be on the team. And again, there's 2 outs. Can you get it out? No, because he had the same situation a few days ago, and he couldn't do it then either. So, I mean, they're just in a situation where they're more than 1 or 2 relievers away, because you're going to have these other guys blowing it. So then it kind of makes the situation just not matter all too much when you're going to have those other guys mess it up, because we've seen it. Like, you'll look good for a couple days. Like, again, the days where Nunez is available, Diaz is available, you look pretty good. But the days where they have to rest, it is a disaster, a nightmare. Like, we're not talking about 1 run, 2 runs, you'll live with it. We're talking about 5 runs, 6 runs, like game over. Like, blowout, once you go into these other guys.
Home runs in a game. Bad. That's how
7
bad.
home runs to an offense that isn't very good. Offense
And
that
not a
has
really
struggled.
good offense. No.
Yeah, and they're hitting 7 home runs. So, it's tough. Like, you want to believe in the team, but it's more than just 1 or 2 guys. And what frustrates me is that I'm looking at the guy they claim, Gage. He's on the bottom here. Matt Gage. Numbers look good. Dodgers want to keep him. Stuff looks good, whatever. But, let's say Gage comes up here, and hopefully get rid of Diekman as the corresponding move. But if he doesn't get the job done, like, what are you going to do? I mean, it's just a situation where it's like, okay, now we're going to call up the rookie that we called up today. Now we're going to try out Adcock. Like, they've given we tried out Danny Young. Like, they've given a good amount of guys a shot. And most of them have not been able to stick. Most of them have not been able to get the job done. And, Matt Festa, Tyler J, they're not ideal. But still, these are other arms that they've tried, and it just hasn't worked out. So, how many more guys do you have to try before you're just like, what else is there to do at this point? You're hoping that Bryce could come in. You're hoping Fujinami could come in. But still, I mean, those guys have those walk problems as well. So, there's multiple things going on here. It's not a simple fix. It's something that, again, it could look good in a couple days, but through the course of a season, in order to get above 500 and well above 500, you got to be able to do it multiple days in a row. It can't be win one, lose one, win two, lose two, like the way they have with these splits. The splits are going to get them nowhere. They've really just got to start stringing them together when their offense is not giving them 6 to 7 runs a game. Now that the offense has come back down to earth, now that JD Martinez has been in a slump, they need these other guys who step up and get the job done. Because right now they've got bailed out a bunch in June by the offense giving them 10 runs. Right now, that's not happening. So you're seeing what the team actually looks like when they're playing more of a sustainable brand of baseball.
And, I'm not really saying that this offense is going to completely fall off a cliff, because I know that eventually Martinez is going to get going. I know that, maybe you get something from Pete Alonso that's a lot better than this. Obviously we do have the concerns about, with DJ Stewart and everything. Jeff McNeil is non-existent at this point. He's a non-factor to this team. And, Mark Vientos, maybe he does cool off, maybe he doesn't. It's whatever, but he's been really good. He's been productive. He should not be batting lower than 6th in this lineup, obviously. He should not be behind any lefty to split up the righties. It really should just be the best hitters get the most plate appearances. And, there has been a lot of manager decisions made by whether it's Mendoza or guys in the front office that have continued to come into a lot of question. And I've kind of laid off of it a lot. I really have not been one to go after that as much. And we'll get into that after we just pull up the series rundown, and we'll obviously get into what happened in these 4 games. For those of you who missed it, the first game of this series was an absolute nightmare towards the end. Luis Severino went 6 innings, but he was not his best whatsoever. 3 separate home runs given up. And the Mets pitching overall was just horrendous. 16 hits allowed, 14 earned runs, 7 home runs, which was a Pittsburgh club record or something that they tied, and I guess they ran out of fireworks, so that was great to know. 2-hit game by Alonso. We had McNeil hit a home run off of Paul Skeens because, why not? Run batted in by Jose Iglesias, and it got so bad that Luis Torrens had to come in to pitch and finish the 8th inning, and the Mets lost 14-2, giving up 14 unanswered runs, which is absolutely just insane to see a pitching staff do that, especially, like we said, against a Pirates team and a Pirates lineup that has really not been producing and has not been consistent whatsoever. In the second game, we did not get much distance from David Peterson. He pitched okay, but a lot of full counts, did not get any distance. He went 4 1/3. But a big game bailed out by a lot of the bottom half of the order, such as Torrens with a 3-for-4 game, driving in 3 runs with the bases loaded on a 3-run double. Another run batted in by Iglesias. Bader with another run batted in. You had a 3-hit game from Nimmo. Another hit by Lindor. Taylor had a hit. Vientos had a hit. And then Diaz, returning from suspension, recorded his first save from return. And the Mets were able to hold on and get the game to victory. On game 3, Manaea, back-to-back days, getting past the 6th inning, which is very, very impressive. 2 hits, 6 scoreless, and but 3 walks along with it. That's kind of just been the situation with him. 6 strikeouts. This game was scoreless until the 8th inning, where Brandon Nimmo broke up the scoreless tie with an RBI double. But then the Pirates fired back as Danel Nunez, who has been phenomenal all year, kind of broke down a little bit, giving up 2 runs in the 8th. Those 2 were driven in on inherited runs for Diaz, as Diaz would stay in the game for the 9th inning. But Lindor would come up huge against Aroldis Chapman, who the Mets continue to own throughout his entire career, with a 2-run single, with the Mets down to their final strike, 86 style. And the Mets were able to come back in the top of the 9th with their backs against the wall and win 3-2 as Diaz recorded back-to-back save opportunities. And in the finale, which was today, July 8th, Christian Scott went 5 2/3, allowed 1 hit, 2 earned runs, which was a 2-run homer against O'Neill Cruz. 3 strikeouts, only threw 77 pitches, which is obviously a topic of a discussion that we'll get into. 2-run homer by Nimmo to tie it after that 2-run homer by O'Neill Cruz. But the Mets completely imploded later on in that game. Obviously, Eric Orzi, making his MLB debut, did not retire a single hitter after facing the bare minimum. Gave up 3 earned runs. Adrian Hauser would tack on another 3. And the Pirates scored 6 unanswered runs against the Mets bullpen to clinch the split of the series. Now, the Mets currently stand now at a game under 500, as you can see on the screen. 2.5 games out of the third wild card. It could change. I don't know, because I think there's like one team in that race that is playing towards the end of the night. But obviously, the big takeaways, we can obviously go to Carlos Mendoza, who has been kind of put under quite the, roasting pan, I'd say, in the last 48 hours with how this bullpen has obviously been managed. There was a lot of House of Horrors situations that happened because it seems like that's something that goes on when the Mets always go to Pittsburgh. But this was quite a long series. Let's just say that for me. I believed that this was one of the longest 4-game sets I've ever seen the Mets play. It just was a slogfest through all 4 games, whether it was close or not. And when you look at it from the outside, the takeaways from this series, I just want to go straight on. It was good to see some distance from the starting rotation, but like we have said, with the bullpen, it just never seems to be enough. It never just seems to be enough to put them in a consistent winning position. What did you think about this one, Frank? Because this was again, would you agree this was a long series? This felt long, like a very spread out series. It really was just quite a journey. Let's just say that these last 4 games.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just something that between night games and day games and Monday games, like a 4-game set going into a Monday is something that normally doesn't happen. Like a lot of teams are off today, it's a common off day. So I feel like that probably kind of went into it. And I feel like just the 4-game set of Washington with another 4-game set here with no off days, it just feels like it's kind of all blending together again, like with day games and night games, 11 o'clock games, 12:30 games, 1:30 games, 7 o'clock games, 4 o'clock games, and it's just all over the place. So, you're kind of, that's why it feels like you're always locked in because it's just something different every day. But, like we talked about with this bullpen, it's so fast the way it happens. When Severino exits a game, it's 2-2, it's 4-2, to give up 10 runs in the span of 2 innings, or in the case of today, giving up 5 runs in an inning, it's just incredibly bad that it just happens so fast and you're just out of the game. Then there's not much you could really do. And like I said, they with a 3 batter minimum rule, a lot of these guys could do so much damage in the span of 3 hitters when they can't get a single out. And it's like we've talked about, it's the walks, it's the hit by pitch, it's the homers, it's everything that you can't do when you're a pitcher. They do all those things across the board with the bullpen. And when it comes to Christian Scott, I mean, this is what we've been talking about. It's what I've been talking about. And I don't understand why Mendoza technically threw himself under the bus today. That's the thing that really drives me nuts is, we talked about the way they've managed him. So when you look at the way he was pitching in the minors, what I find interesting too is that, his pitch count, in his 3rd start of the year in the minors, he went 95 pitches. Then he went 85. His last start in the minor leagues was 71 pitches. His first game in the major leagues was 94. So right away, that's over 20 pitches difference. Then his next start, 91, 84, 94, 91. So when they called him up to the majors, he was working 6 innings. Most of the starts were 6 innings. So they were working him pretty hard right away, going over 90 pitches every start. Then he gets sent down back to the minors, and right away, that pitch count goes all the way down to 60 for back-to-back starts. So that's a 30 pitch difference that your arm is like, all right, I'm getting used to the 90 pitches now. I'm going back to 60. Okay, so now I'm really getting scaled down and I'm not working nearly as hard. Then his next start, 72, then 81, and then first start back, 99 pitches. And what bothers me is that the reason why he was sent back down was for that innings limit, because in those starts that he's making in the minors, he's going 4 innings pretty much. I mean, he was 3 innings, 2/3 innings, 4 innings, 4 innings. So they really didn't want him to go more than that. But as we know, with the way this bullpen is, that's not something they could afford to do. They can't have a guy that's only going 4 innings when so many of these other guys could only go 5. So that's not going to work out. When he gets here, they're going to push him. And the start against Washington, he was pitching really good. And, once he hit that pitch count of 80 or so, where he's used to been pitching the past starts in the minors, that would have been a perfectly good time to pull him theoretically. He finishes on a good note. It's a good start, and you don't risk injury. I mean, that's the thing that drives me nuts, is that if you're telling me that he wasn't on the major league team, even though he's a better option than a lot of these other starters, because you didn't want him to get hurt, you wanted to do an innings limit, you don't immediately throw him 99 pitches after his most recent start was 81 pitches and he was throwing 70 pitches, 60 pitches. That's how you get somebody hurt. It's not with an innings limit. It's with not conditioning their arm. It's not with building up their arm. What bothers me is that it looks like the Mets did not have a plan, because if they were like, okay, we have this idea that we're going to call him up probably in the beginning of June, I feel like the increasing in the minor leagues needed to be a little more gradual. It says the expectation is that he needs to go at least 90 pitches. He needs to be throwing 90 pitches consistently. But in this case, it was almost 100. So the expectation of just kind of a young pitcher, inexperienced pitcher, to be like, okay, you're gonna get accustomed to this, and now we're gonna do something totally different, and then you're gonna get used to throwing a lot of pitches, and now you're gonna get used to not throwing a lot of pitches again. So that constant back and forth. So then, so I didn't like the way they handled that. So then today you have a similar situation where he's pitching really good, pitch count is reasonable, and they pull him. And then after the game, Mendoza says, oh, well, with him throwing 99 pitches last time, he was only able to throw 75. So if you knew that was the case, why did you push him 99 pitches? That's what I don't, that he totally threw himself under the bus, admitting that he overextended him. And then he just was like, well, now I have to cut back now. But the reason why he overextended against Washington was because he needed another inning out of him because of how bad the bullpen is. And to me, this is just my opinion. When you are below 500 and your bullpen absolutely sucks, you should not risk injuring Christian Scott because your bullpen sucks. I don't think that's a good idea. To me, I think the most important things for the Mets right now is the development of the young players, particularly Alvarez, the pitchers. That's the most important thing to me, is making sure Christian Scott is healthy and he's progressing and developing the right way. And if you're going to be doing this, just constantly changing what his body is getting used to, I don't think that's smart, or it's going to keep him healthy. I feel like that's also what puts you at injury risk, because who knows, maybe next start he goes over 90 pitches again, because they just keep changing it. There's nothing consistent. And I just feel that their actions didn't match their words, that they didn't really have that much of a plan. I feel like it was just very abrupt. You don't do you don't do a month in the minors, then a month in the majors, then a month in the minors, and then you send them back up to the major leagues and just constantly changing things. So I feel like they did not handle this correctly from the beginning. And now, they're paying the repercussions. And for me, like, whether the Mets make the playoffs, miss the playoffs, whatever happens, if I'm looking long term, if I'm looking at the future, I've said this over and over, but if the Mets are going to be an actual successful team again, it's going to have to be through the rotation. It's going to have to be through the combination of Senga, Scott, Sproat, and hopefully Tidwell's in that mix as well. And if you're mishandling Scott, if you're putting him at injury risk, that's not going to accomplish that goal. And I feel that with a young pitcher as a rookie, the mental game is so important. And I feel like just having him finish on positive notes, stringing together good starts in the major leagues could go a long way for him. So I hated pushing him against Washington because you have to pick because again, what it comes down to is that if you need to push Christian Scott that much because you don't trust your bullpen, you're just not going to win anything. You might as well just sell because you can't play like that. Eventually, the other guys on the team have to step up and get the job done. You can't have Christian Scott be at risk of injury because your bullpen is bad. If your bullpen is this bad, just sell off. Because you can't manage like that. You still have too many days to go, and you can't risk hurting the guys that actually mean something in the future. These other guys, the Adam Ottavinos, the Diekmans, the Quintanas, all these guys on one-year deals, forget them. They mean nothing because they're here now. They'll be gone down the road. But Christian Scott, this is a cornerstone. This is a building block. This is a guy that needs to be treated with the maximum amount of attention and care. So, if these other guys can get their job done, that's their problem. You shouldn't put Christian Scott at risk because those other guys can't do the right thing.
Yeah, and listen, I understand the frustration because I think in a vacuum, this looks bad. And you're kind of explaining it the right way as to where every single time that he goes out there, the workload seems to be so different. And the workload seems to be just so mentally challenging for a young pitcher as to where they're trying to adjust to the major league level, and the workload has been kind of in and out of AAA, and then you're seeing them pull him early, then push him farther. I think that I personally don't agree that this was handled as bad as people think it is. And listen, I'm just gonna counter argument this, and this is just again from a standpoint as to where this obviously comes from the injury concern, and we talk about this all the time of young pitchers and everything. I think that Christian Scott is able to go 6 or 7 innings. He has the conditioning to do that, but it all really depends on the rest. And I think that is how they are kind of going off of that, because they're trying to be careful because he's a pitcher who has not pitched 100 innings in any season whatsoever at any level, whether it is college, whether it is at the lower levels of the minor leagues, whether it is in AA or AAA. He has not done that at any level. And that's kind of how they're trying to ramp him up while also using him to possibly compete and possibly win. I understand you can't really have both. You can't really have both to balance out for this team to kind of work together as like that kind of that decent wheelbarrow or whatever it is, like where they can actually function as a team and actually win. How I see it is the Mets pushed him farther against Washington, which was July 3rd. The last time that he made an appearance in AAA was June of the 25th. That is 7 days of rest. That's why I think that they pushed him. Today, he went 77 pitches because he had 4 days of rest. So I think that that's kind of how they're looking at it, from how much rest does he have in between these starts, and we can push him to what we can push him, whatever limit it needs to be. I think that there is a way as to where he can throw 100 pitches. But they're kind of dialing this thing back, especially with a lot of the scares. Even if he is healthy, even if he said afterwards, after this game, he said, I feel fine pitching on 4 days rest. I felt fine. Great. He's still just not conditioned in order to be every single 5 days. This guy can pitch a guaranteed 7 innings. He's not there yet. Obviously, a lot of that has to go with he will get 5 days rest or 6 days rest once Kodai Senga comes back, once you have this guaranteed 6-man rotation. because Christian Scott is obviously here to stay. I know he was sent down to AAA, but he is obviously here to stay. He's given us enough proof as to why he belongs in the majors as compared to a Tyler McGill or a Joey Lucchesi or even David Peterson, who is probably going to still be in this rotation when Senga comes back. But the problem is that they were on a 75 pitch limit, which I understand. I'm okay with preserving the arm. I get it. That's my opinion. I want to win. I want to win as much as everybody wants to. But for someone who, I don't know if it comes from a PTSD of what happened with Harvey and what almost happened with Wheeler or Syndergaard, it didn't really happen with DeGrom. DeGrom kind of was able to stay healthy, relatively healthy throughout that. And looking at that young rotation that only had one healthy turn through the rotation, I'm okay with them trying to do anything to preserve the guy's health. Because even if he is not injured right now, even if he does have the injury concerns, we did get a report from Michael Marino earlier after the game when he was polled. And he said that there were some Tommy John surgery concerns that went on with Christian Scott during the offseason. He healed. He didn't need it. But this is also somebody who has not gone past 90 innings in a year, still hasn't. And they're kind of trying to preserve it from half to half. What can they actually be? What can they actually get from him to produce at the major league level, but also kind of adjust him to this major league level? And I know it looks bad. It does look bad from the outside. But I have kind of liked how they have done this, mainly because of how dangerous it is to overwork a starting pitcher like we've seen the Mets do in the past.
Okay. I agree with your stance of the days of rest, but I think in this particular scenario, what I didn't like was the fact that once he got over 80 pitches and going into that sixth inning against Washington, you could see the effectiveness wearing off. You could see that he's getting tired and hits are starting to be strung together, and then the home run happens, and then you pull him. You were up 5-0. You had a decent lead. So I think that, and even if he had the 10 days rest, 7 days rest before, whatever, like you knew that, okay, now when I use him, going after this, he is going to have 4 days rest anyway next time. So I think that if he was consistently going like 90 pitches in the minors, I would have had issue because he's used to that. But I just think that regardless of how much rest he had, he's just not accustomed to pitching that many pitches in an outing. Yeah. And you could see with your own eyes the effectiveness wearing off. And since he's not used to it, that also causes injury risk if the player is not used to that kind of workload. So I think that I agree that he should have more days rest and all that stuff. But I think in this scenario, just looking back and going forward, that it just wasn't the right decision.
Yeah, obviously, I understand how the Mets, they kind of screwed up in the matter of who are they giving the innings to. It really has just been a question mark since Kodai Senga got hurt as to how they're going to fill in these innings that he was providing last year of, 166 innings that he gave us last year? So that's a lot of innings to fill in from the starting rotation, from a rotation that really struggled to go distance last year. This year they still are. It was really hard to kind of fill in those innings, and they've kind of just been rotating these things in and out. But I have liked how they've been cautious with Christian Scott. There's been a few things as to where it was very confusing. I get him pitching not much in the minor leagues as to where this year in AAA, they're taking him out after 3 innings, like they're using him as an opener, whatever. I know that looks like, different workloads in and out, but to me, it looks like let's not waste all these bullets that we can use right now on AAA hitters. That's how I kind of see how the Mets are looking at it. And I've always been one to say that AAA is such a fluctuated level as compared to AA, where I think that if a pitcher dominates AA, they should get their chance in the major leagues no matter what. And they should be able to pitch there. If they're at that certain age of 24, 25, they should be able to just be in the major leagues, because in AAA, it's basically a confidence destroyer if you're a young pitcher there, because the home run numbers are up. The slugging numbers are up. It's a ridiculous hitting environment. And with the Mets having these pitchers that, are young and obviously can be they can have it can contribute to this team down the road. I feel like there's another factor as to where the health needs to be put into consideration. And if it is inconvenient for the Mets winning chances, building a sustainable winner is probably a lot more important to me than winning some random game in Pittsburgh. And I know it sounds bad. I get it. You want to win now. Every Mets fan wants to win right now. I get it. I understand it. But I'm not trying to push a young pitcher past what his obvious limit is just for the sake of winning some random game in July. I care a lot more about the team's future than them contending for a wild card right now. I get that sounds bad. I understand. But there's a lot of factors that go into that.
But
where the Mets are stuck in the middle. Yeah.
Well, here's the problem, too, with both starts. So they push Christian Scott because they're like, oh, well, if we get this one more inning out of him, then, we'll win the game. Like, maybe that's the thought process. Okay. So it doesn't happen. Ottavino comes in, Ottavino pitches well. Ottavino came out, and that's where Diekman has the blow up, and then Adcock adds on another run, and they lose the game.
Yep.
So
there's the micromanaging that we've.
So you overextended Christian Scott because you really want to win, right? But and then in this scenario where you don't push him, the bullpen blew it. And with the way this game went, even if Christian Scott gets that last batter that everyone's flipping out about, do you really think that the Mets were going to go scoreless the rest of the game and that they weren't going to give up more runs out of that bullpen? So no matter, this is what I'm getting at, is that the bullpen is going to stink regardless. Two wrongs don't make a right. That's kind of the way I see it, is that I don't think it's worth pushing Christian Scott when the bullpen's going to blow it anyway. At this point, I'm I want him to develop. I want him to get major league reps in and just continue to improve. And if we win, great. If we don't, at least I know that for years, I'm going to have a really good pitcher that's going to give me a much more realistic chance at being a sustainable winner instead of some mediocre wildcard team. That's kind of the way I see it. And I think that, Sproat's doing fantastic in AA. He's 23, so he's a little younger, but if calling up Sproat means that I now get another day of rest for Christian Scott, I don't know. Why not? Because right now, with McGill sent down, this is the kind of situation they're going to find themselves in. Is that if they don't have off days, they only have 5 guys in rotation until Senga comes back. So I think for the time being, this is going to happen another time through the rotation coming up. So what's the pitch count going to be there? Are we going to go back to 90 something and then next start go back to 70 something? I think there has to be some sort of consistency where
and we have no days off until
it can't be
the break.
The All-Star break, right? Yeah.
We don't have any days until
All-Star
the
break.
All-Star break. So there still is a
can't
turn
be
through
two
the
extremes.
rotation. So yeah. And I understand that when you look at it from a team that is trying to win, it looks weird. It really does look weird how they're kind of handling it with Christian Scott. But I also would include that they also were counting on possibly putting Christian Scott into the rotation with Kodai Senga here. And that also has kind of put in a bump as well. I'm hoping that when Kodai Senga comes back, you can just be able to have some kind of consistency shown on the field as to where he can consistently go 90 pitches every 5 days or every 6 days. But I think that they're kind of rotating these things in and out. Yeah, no, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say the other big thing when it comes to pitching as a whole, I've been looking at it more and more. The Francisco Alvarez effect is really real with some of these guys. I mean, the numbers are drastic. You look at a guy like Jose Quintana, when Francisco Alvarez catches him, 2.08 ERA. The 2 starts that Torrens has caught him, 7.04 ERA. With Nito, 7 ERA. Narvaez, 4.67. This is the one that's really crazy. Sean Manaea with Francisco Alvarez, 8 starts, has given up 6 earned runs, has a 1.33 ERA. With Torrens, 1 start of 6 earned. In 1 start, he gave up 6 runs. So in 1 start with Torrens equals 8 starts with Francisco Alvarez. And then, Nito, 3.62. Narvaez, 5.60. Peterson and Severino, there hasn't been much of a difference. Severino's actually been quite a bit better with Torrens, but Francisco Alvarez is yet to catch Christian Scott. Yeah. So what you're telling me is that you're prioritizing Manaya's performance and Quintana's performance over Christian Scott, when Alvarez is your catcher of the future. Christian Scott is a pitcher of the future. So why are these guys not building a rapport, and why are these guys not getting the chemistry of working with one another? You know, to me, it's like, and you know what? And again, it's like you keep compensating for lack of talent, and this, you're not really hurting Christian Scott, but you're not getting the maximum development of Christian Scott. Because Quintana is such a fraud, you need to have Francisco Alvarez catch him, but you can't prioritize getting the most out of Christian Scott by having Alvarez catch him. That's the kind of stuff that drives me nuts. Like, you're telling me I need to protect, I can't trust Ottavino and I can't trust Diekman, so I'm going to push Christian Scott. I can't trust Quintana and Manaya, so Alvarez doesn't get to catch Christian Scott. They're doing these things that just aren't all of the moves that maximize player development. And it's really bothering me that they're just letting his talent they're kind of relying on it too much. They're taking it for granted. And I think that, like, if you want to be a winner, young player development in the starting rotation is just the most important thing. And they're not treating him as the most important guy. They're just not. And it's something that I just don't think is right. Like, again, it's like, if these other guys can't get the job done, why is that Christian Scott's fault? You know, why is he the one that has to pay the price for all the other guys not being able to get the job done?
Yeah, and that's the problem. That's the problem with that, is that you're kind of also wasting some bullets from Francisco Alvarez, because he can't be behind the plate every single day.
Exactly. Whether he's 22 years old or not.
Whether he's 22 years old or not, you know, he's, you know, knees are knees. You know, he's what is he? He's squatting how many times behind there? Like 100 to 200 times a game. That's a lot of toll on a catcher's body, no matter how old he is.
And the same thing with him. He's the other guy that's the most important player on this team. Yeah. Most important. I need him healthy as well. So I don't want to overuse him. I don't want to catch him. What was it? 10 games in a row, whatever they did, because they had the off days and stuff like that. Like, you have to think of the long picture. This team, like, I hate to, you know, we're honest here. This team is not that special to where you be like, I have to, you know, this is our one chance. I have to make sure that Alvarez is out there as much as possible and Christian Scott's pushed as much as possible. Like, this team is not that great. Like, they're not that special. They've had guys have some good years, had some good runs, but it's not like this, oh my God, team that, like, we really got to overuse these young players. Like,
are you sure it's not Alvarez, oh my God? I mean,
yeah, well, maybe for Candelita, but, like, you know, just I just think that prioritizing player development should be more important. Alvarez being healthy and working with the young pitchers, that should be the most important thing. I don't think, you know, like you said, a game against Washington or a game against Pittsburgh, because it's like, if you're struggling beating Washington and Pittsburgh, if you even get a wild card, you're not going anywhere, because you're going to be facing teams that are quite a bit better than Washington and Pittsburgh. So you know what I mean? So it's like, if you're struggling against bad to mediocre teams, then how are you going to beat a good team? You know? So I just think that you can't be treating, you just got to really think about the big picture. And, you know, right now, I just don't see it. It looked great in June when their offense was hitting, but, you know, right now, when you see more of a realistic offense, more of what the offense actually is, this is what the team is actually looking like.
Yeah, I mean, this is pretty much said perfectly by Project Ball here.
Yeah.
It's a mediocre team. You know, he's saying sell at the deadline and start something special. Obviously, that something special is, it started up by ingrown talent. Whether you're looking at, let's sign Juan Soto or trade for this guy, trade for this guy, it starts off with homegrown talent. Let's not forget how the Mets did it in the beginning.
And here's the thing with Juan Soto, too. He has the best player in baseball with him. They are playing like one of the worst teams in baseball right now.
Yeah.
Like, we don't have Aaron Judge.
Because top-heavy rosters don't work.
Yeah, Juan Soto has Aaron Judge, and they stink right now. Like, they got off to a great start, but they are bad. So, we don't have Judge.
They get no sympathy
so
from
I don't think Soto, I don't think Soto just instantly solves things. I think having
No.
a young team with a great rotation and a great catcher, hopefully a really good third baseman and a shortstop and left field, like that's more along the lines of what a good team looks like. I mean, not just a couple of stars and we spent all of our money there.
Yeah, I mean, I obviously would like to be somewhat aggressive in free agency when that time comes for the next season.
It has to be for the right. It has to be for the right guys.
It can't be. It can't be just let's get Soto and call it an off season. It just can't be like that. That's not what they need as of right now. But off the Soto talk, I just think that you can also look at it from when the Mets kind of formed this a little bit. They even did it from within as well, from how they got their success from the beginning. Let's not forget that, again, of course, it all fell apart well short because that's what happens with the Mets. They always, it's too soon, too done. But they obviously have that pitching staff, that young pitching staff, all these guys that came up through their system, where they acquired them in trades or whatever. They were all young. They also had Pete Alonso, who became a core member of the team. They kind of lucked into Jeff McNeil as a non-prospect. Brandon Nimmo was starting to establish himself as he started to get healthy. Michael Conforto looked like a solid piece. That obviously did not work out. But then, before all of that happened, they come in, obviously, the big bucks come in with Cohen, and they get Francisco Lindor, who was the star of the game, even though most of the Mets fans will say that he's a bum, but that was an established player. So they were able to build up this internal core. Obviously, it did not work because the Mets are the Mets, but they obviously were able to build up that core of players, of homegrown players that could be cornerstones to the team. They're not superstars, but they're good players. Good players make a great team. And they were able to use the resources, such as Cohen's money, to get a guy like Francisco Lindor. Obviously, that hasn't worked out in the slightest as much as we've hoped it has. We've only had one playoff appearance ever since then. But the problem that we're looking at is the Mets are kind of running dry here as to where they can just throw money at a situation and just keep going like this. They need to develop this talent, and there's a reason as to why I'm okay with, if there's I'm okay with whether this team sucks or not, because I like the trajectory that they're on, whether we don't know what that's going to be. Because even if we do sell at the deadline and everybody gets upset, this team, we're going to sell, it's over. I mean, the team's going to get younger. I know I'm going to have younger talent in here. And even if these players don't pan out, they still could provide tools to help you win in the margins, because you don't just need a superstar like Juan Soto. You don't need that. You need these guys to help you win in the margins as well. That's something that the Yankees don't have. And they haven't been able to develop that fairly well.
The Yankees haven't stolen a base in weeks. I mean, they're just,
and that explains it, because I'm pretty sure, I don't know, it was
a bunch of random veterans and things like that.
I'm pretty sure, I don't know what it is. I mean, it's just counterproductive offense. But again, this is not a Yankees podcast. But I'm pretty sure I looked it up, I don't know, last week or something. Didn't I? I don't know if I said this to our group chat or something. They grounded into 92 double plays in 89 games. How's that possible? Well, you don't steal bases.
Also, they don't run. They also don't hustle.
They don't move.
So, I mean, you have Glaber not moving. That's going to happen.
Yeah. You don't move. And you need those guys to help you win in the margins. And they kind of filled in a little bit of those holes in the offseason. They got the guys like Bader and Taylor. But again, marginal types of players. They're not young. They don't have much upside in anything. But they also kind of need to have some of those players, like whether it is Luis Angel Acuna, or whether it is Jet Williams, who I'm not high on as franchise cornerstones, but they can help you win in the margins. I'm not dumb. I'll troll about them and how they're too short to enter the stadium or something. But those guys can help you with the tools that they have to win games in the margins. That's how you build a complete team. And the Mets
right now, I was gonna say right now, Bader. I mean, he's really creeping up on Marte as far as like production. Like he also first of all, he's been healthy, so that already makes him more productive.
Yeah.
But right now, you look at the numbers. Bader is just about as good as Starling Marte, and he actually plays really good defense, whereas Marte can't move. And Marte's getting paid quite a bit more than Harrison Bader. So you know there are those times where like if the guys have some things that you like about them that they actually can move, they could be pretty productive players for you. And when you saw Harrison Bader, a former Yankee, hitting home runs against the Yankees, like that kind of sting a little bit when you have Trent Grisham batting 180 and not trying to field balls in center field. Like that doesn't not a great look.
Yeah, obviously. And listen, I'm not I love my power. I love my big bats and everything, but you need a team in order to win. And you know, the Braves, yes, they hit a lot of home runs, and I understand they haven't been good this year, but the Braves, they hit a lot of home runs, but also they run the bases well. They play great defense. They pitch fairly well in these high leverage situations. I mean, yeah, at their best, of course, they've had a lot of injuries this year. Of course, I'm not going to pull out the sympathy tag for the Braves. Fuck them. But I'm just joking. But, you know, I think that when you look at it from a complete team, you need all tools to mingle in with each other. And the only way to really do that, to find those raw tools that can get better, is to bring in the young talent. And I don't see that as to where let's just shell out this amount of money for this certain hitter who did well in a small market and didn't do it in a Mets uniform, and then they regress, and then they do this, and they do that. I don't want that drama. I mean, with these young players, no matter what, who are making league minimum, I'm getting what I'm paying for, whether they pan out or not. You know, I'm not trying to get another guy like Starling Marte, who has been a factor to this team. He's been great. Like, he's been an impact signing. Like, it's good to see him at his best. But are you voluntarily right now at age 35 looking back at it and saying, yeah, I'm giving this guy $20 million a year? No, absolutely not. It's just not going to, like, it just, you know, I feel like the Mets really just need to apply the young talent. And that's kind of how I've looked at it going forward. And I really do, you know, I appreciate what a lot of these guys have been here for a long time, but, you know, it hasn't been successful. And it just, and if there is pieces we have to move on from, if we don't compete in the next few weeks, which is very important, so be it. And maybe there is another direction they go in, but who knows? I want this team to get younger no matter what, if they're competing or not.
And what I don't get is the organization's love for DJ Stewart. I mean, this guy has 10 lives. Yeah. I mean, again, I said it like a couple weeks ago now, but give Beatty a shot over DJ Stewart. I mean, come on now. At least he's providing you a few more tools, a few more possibilities, because there is just nothing from that guy. I mean,
that's an area that we can go on forever.
The walks with no stolen bases after it.
Yeah.
It's just what is it? It's not going to do much for me, and especially in the spot they're batting him in. Like we said, sandwiching him between Alonso and Alvarez, or Alonso and Vientos, or whatever. Like walks there are going to do nothing for me. I mean, just I need someone that's actually getting hits, getting extra base hits, doing something like. For Beatty, at least there's more upside in Brett Beatty than DJ Stewart. How much, I don't know. As long as he's lifting the ball, things could happen. But that's the thing. It's like things could happen with Brett Beatty. Nothing's going to happen with DJ Stewart. Like, it's final. Like, it's over. Yeah. Nothing. He's 30 years old. He's been a journeyman. It's not going to happen with DJ Stewart. Like, he's done. There's nothing left. There's no upside. There's no potential. With Beatty, like, there is not much. But there's still a possibility, a small possibility, that there's something there. Listen, how many times for years did we say trade Mark Vientos? For years, we said trade Mark Vientos. He has no role, hitting profile, not good. He's an elite player right now. He's a guy that I've been waiting for. I'm waiting for the regression. I'm waiting to say, oh, there he is. It was a fluke. It was just a flash in the pan. Every time I check, his batting average is still near 300. His OPS is above 900. Every now and then he makes a play or two at third base. And we were ready to write this guy off. Plenty of times. For years we wanted to get rid of him. And he's looking like a really solid player right now. And heck no, I'm not trading him. I want to see what I got. Maybe I finally have a third baseman. I'm going to let the guy keep playing because we've been looking for that position forever, Brett Beatty included. But I'm just like, you never know. You really never know when these young players, all of a sudden, given the opportunities, the right circumstance, and all of a sudden something happens. And I just think with DJ Stewart, like, there's just not much there. It's like he plays right field, but he doesn't play it well. He can't run the bases. He can't hit. He's just not, he's not giving me anything right now.
Yeah. I mean, he is a part-time player who has been playing a little bit way too much to be considered a part-time player recently. And it's just not like, yeah, he can get on base or whatever, but it's like, I'm not... It's just, it limits you a lot. And, if you have him because he needs to play the outfield, I understand they call it Ben Gamble, and they have Taylor, and they have Bader, and Nimmo is obviously plays every day, but I'd much rather just kind of have the utility man come up here instead of DJ Stewart, who's just like an extra bat off the bench. And again, I just want to see
and
more
he's not
turns
even
being
a
provided.
bat. He's just walks. He's not even a bat. He's just walks.
And it's not like walks are bad. It's like, again, like walks
depends who it
are
comes
fine.
from.
You get on.
It depends who it
you
comes
get
from.
on. And I think that in a vacuum, DJ Stewart has a great approach. He swings at pitches in the strike zone, and he does not chase. Great. Fantastic. But he's not able to do damage with those pitches in the strike zone. A lot of swing and miss. A lot of Joey Gallo, as we like to say. He doesn't
even have the home runs to be Gallo.
Whiffer barrel. A disciplined whiffer barrel. And it's not even just like, if you're talking about quality of contact, which, there is a sort of unluck involved with him. I get it, but, when hits aren't dropping, when he's just not able to even put the ball in play fairly well, and when he does put in the ball in play, I mean, if you want to talk about batting average and ball in play, 198. So, I mean, I think that when you talk about situational hitting, when you talk about a guy who has to be really good at that situational hitting from the 5-hole, it just hasn't been sustained enough as to where, I'm putting this guy 5th in the order just to split up the right-handed hitters because he can turn into one once in a while. I think that he's done his job. He's run his course. Time to give somebody else a chance. And it's just kind of running out as to where you don't really have any of that Vogelbach pedigree where he was an all-star once or he hit 30 home runs one season. You don't really have that. He really does not had a career. He really hasn't. So at some point they got to cut the cord on that. And listen, we can go on about DJ Stewart over and over and over again, but I actually want to turn to more awfulness, which, to be honest, we like to be as constructive as we possibly can. And we like to, whether we are harsh or not, there comes to a point where you can describe things as inconsistency. You can describe things as unreliable or struggles. Right now on the screen, there's a headline that says, just straight up, Jake Diekman is awful. And there's no real way to put it. He has just been a complete liability. And it becomes a lot more noticeable, obviously, with Brooks Raley going down as the other lefty who was supposed to be in the pen. Danny Young being overworked and sent down to the minors. He's the only lefty in the pen, which I personally don't care about. If you can't pitch to lefties or righties, you stink, which Jake Diekman has not been able to do. So, yeah, he stinks. He's been awful. And whether we talk about it from his numbers, his individual year, it always seems like he creates a mess, and then he creates an even bigger mess, and he continues to make it an even bigger mess. There is no confidence in him, but for some reason he continues to get a lot more opportunities than he should, and I want to obviously put in a breakdown of how bad Jake Diekman has been. Whether you want to look at the 5 earned run average, the main thing we can talk about is the command, which has been an absolute disaster. Whether it is locating things in the right part of the zone, getting whiffs, getting chases. He's been able to manage contact fairly well, mainly because the ball's not in the strike zone at all, ever, when he throws the ball. An 18.2 walk rate, which is the second highest behind the man that we destroyed in Aroldis Chapman, who he showed that on display, obviously, in that third game of the series. And also for somebody who needs to be in there for matchups, or whether you want to use the situational lefty excuse or not, opponents are holding a 372 weighted on base average, which is WOBA, which is basically just outcomes that are weighted to their league run value against Diekman with runners on base. So he's been horrendous from the stretch. He's side slinging a lot, not hitting his points, not making pitches whatsoever. 14 of his 15 earned runs allowed this season have occurred in medium to high leverage situations, which is a no-no. Like we've said with Drew Smith, if you can't contribute in only low leverage situations, you're pretty much useless to a bullpen that needs to back up a rotation. But when you look at it from batted ball data, he's actually had a fairly good time. But like I've said, the ball's not in the strike zone enough to even care. Constant blow-ups whatsoever. We all know he's a three-pitch guy. He's a side slinger. Great arm slot when he is right. He's had an up-and-down career. Been DFA'd a lot recently. Obviously, we all know that he kind of has like that horizontally enhanced fastball with a lot of run. We've talked about vertical approach angle all the time, of how it can make or break careers, but from the slot that he has and the release height that he throws from, that's obviously a little bit different. And the movement that he has from horizontally, you want it hovering around 4 for your fastball, but overall, that's kind of like the ideal where he wants it, obviously in the 5s, different arm slot, different type of carry, but he has not been able to command the zone at all. We know that the stuff is there, and I believe that the stuff is still there. But when you have the high leverage stuff and can't apply it, and you're a reliever who's not young, at some point you got to cut the cord. And when your fastball, which you use 60% of the time, and your changeup don't tunnel fairly well, you haven't been able to get chases, which are also at a career low for him this year. He's really been a full-on liability in 26.2 innings for the Mets. There really has not been, with the problem, whether you want to point out the good or bad, there really has not been a single situation that you feel comfortable putting Jake Diekman in whatsoever this season. We talked about this a little bit on last episode. Anthony Rivera was here to join us as to where Diekman has been just horrendous. I mean, there really is just not any specific set of words you can put. Jake Diekman has been a liability no matter what position you put him in. Whether he can throw left-handed or not, which I think is the main reason as to why he's still here. Which I don't even care about, like I've said. But Jake Diekman has been just an absolute nightmare on the mound. He's been one of the main reasons as to why this team has a walk problem. He's been one of the main reasons as to why this team gets into a lot of blowups. As to why, when it rains, it pours. Jake Diekman. That's as far as you can get. The main catalyst. There's no reason to have him on this team right now. I just don't see any upswing of him actually doing anything for this bullpen. Frank, is there any other reason why you would think Jake Diekman is here besides that he throws with his left hand?
Absolutely not. I mean, when you're looking at it, and I don't have those numbers in front of me. I don't look at those numbers because obviously I'm really so astute to them. But when I watch just from, let's say, a fan's perspective, yeah, he misses by so much. You have a left on left matchup. He's throwing it in the other batter's box. Nobody's chasing that. That's just a waste of a pitch. Absolute waste of a pitch. You're not fooling anybody. Maybe only like Pete Alonso and Javi Baez would swing at those pitches. Everyone else is like, nah, I'm not swinging at that. Just let that go. Yeah. And it's a lot of non-competitive pitches to the point where it's like when he is near the zone, he doesn't have much room to work with because he's already put himself in a very bad count. And what's frustrating with Diekman is that his numbers against left-handed hitters, they're actually good. 159 average, 515 OPS. But the problem is that when he faces a left-handed hitter, he walks them. So they have a 333 on base percentage. So it's like he never even faces the lefty. That's the thing that drives me nuts is they'll bring him in with 2 outs to face a left-handed hitter. He walks the lefty and now has to face the righty. And the righties, they have a 916 OPS against him. They've been destroying him, and that's where he gets hurt. So what happens, it'll be like walk, hit. And that's exactly what happened the other day. And the other thing he does, he hits batters too. And what drives me nuts, like he does everything wrong. I had the numbers pulled in front of me. It was like in 60 something innings last year, he hit 1 batter. In 26 innings, he's hit 3 batters. And what drives me nuts is like we've talked about DJ Stewart. It's like he really hasn't been that great for a long time now. And he's always had this walk problem. For a very long time, he's always walked batters. The one time he was good was last year when he was in Tampa Bay, where everybody is good. I mean, like, just because you were good as a Tampa Bay Ray doesn't mean you were going to be a good pitcher with the Mets, with this pitching coach. We are not Tampa Bay. I wish we were, but we are not. So it's like, just because you're good there doesn't mean you're good here. And he's been on like 9 teams since 2018. Like, there's got to be a reason why no one's keeping this guy. And, when you are 37 years old and you've been in the league for 13 years, it's like we talk about with upside, with potential. It's over. It's like the same thing with Ottavino. It's like once you reach this age, the velo's not coming back. Like, you're just done. So I think with the rule changes, the walk problem, he's just not usable. You know what I mean? And it's like we said, it's like if your job is to face lefties and you just walk the lefties, you don't even actually have a plate appearance against them, it's a waste because then the righties are just going to crush you and the manager can't take you out the game. Like Mendoza is trying his best to put Diekman in a position to succeed, bringing him in when there's 2 outs so that if he gets the lefty out, that's all he has to do. Mendoza's not bringing Diekman in to start an inning and be like, face 3 batters with some right-handers in there. It's Diekman's like, well, I walked him, so too late. I got to face the righties and get killed before he can come bail me out.
Here's the thing about Diekman. If you're facing Jake Diekman, you don't even need to bring a bat. You don't need to bring a bat. And even if he does give you something into the zone, most of his fly balls leave the ballpark. I mean, that's kind of how it's been this year. But here's the funny stat, and I'm going to give this to you. He has appeared in 37 games this year. He has pitched and completed 26.2 innings, which means that he has been pulled from the game so many goddamn times. And if you want to look at some win probability, negative 0.77, right? Whatever you want to look at that. But he's been pulled from the game 30 times. And that has been in process of in between the inning. He has been pulled 17 times after the 3-batter minimum rule, after facing 3 batters, which means that he comes in here guaranteed to put himself in a mess and leave it for somebody else. So basically, it's like, I am going to come in here, I'm going to enter and open the door for the pit bull. He's going to shit on the bed, and then he's going to leave. That's literally how it is with Jake Diekman. He doesn't help. He doesn't do anything to a positive. He just puts you in a shittier position. And obviously, there's been other relievers who have done that too. Same thing goes for Adam Ottavino, who, to be honest, is probably just a mirror image of Jake Diekman as of right now. Just a heart attack waiting to happen. But, like, Adam Ottavino has had a little bit more success than Jake Diekman recently. Jake Diekman has been a mess. And we know about this walk problem. And that's been the main reason as to why he has killed us, because it hasn't been hard contact. Like I've said, the contact management has actually been good when the ball is put in play.
Well, the problem is that since he's already put guys on base, that one hit, even if it's a single, it leads to a run or two because he put other guys on in front of them.
Horrendous from the stretch, like I've said. Horrendous from the stretch. Career low in left on base percentage. And with runners on base, like I've said, what was it, 372 WOBA against him? It's been so bad that, yes, probably he's still getting these strikeout numbers or whatever, but, I mean, he just throws with his left hand, and that's the reason why he's here.
Well, and the other thing that's most concerning to me is that as the season's progressing, he's getting worse. And I think that's something that you really got to be like, we've got to just pull the plug before more damage is done.
And this has been the encouraging part, and I'll get into it. I'll put in the encouraging part of this, and then you can get into it, as to where we know that he has that $4 million vesting option.
Mm-hmm.
If he appears in 58 games this year. He's appeared in 37 games. Acquiring a left-handed pitcher like Matt Gage, who's been able to put away hitters fairly well, has a little bit of the hard contact problem. That, putting him also on their 40-man roster, I think that is kind of one of the first steps as to where a decision is going to be made on Diekman. But I feel like they're going to probably ride this out a little bit more, as to where it's like, oh, we're cutting close to 48 appearances. He's at 37 right now. So I feel like they're going to try to put some lefties in the wings here. I wouldn't be surprised if they acquire another lefty and then put him on there and transfer somebody else to the 60-day IL. To be honest, it probably would have to be Marte, because we've heard nothing from him. I mean, probably something like that, but I'm getting too ahead of myself on that. But it's just a disaster waiting to happen, and I think that he's one of the main problems as to why. Adam Ottavino, we've talked about that before. He was another one that we need to let go of as well. He hasn't been the problem in this series. We haven't really seen him that much, to be honest.
Yeah,
seems like they've lost the trust in him.
But again, that's kind of my point with what's been happening with Scott, is that I don't trust Ottavino, so I can't bring him in. So you're just leaving Scott out there, or you're just going to a rookie instead. You know what I mean? Like, and just putting him in a really tough spot. So it's like, so the rookie, in this case, Eric Orzi, like, he's the guy that ends up getting destroyed because the veteran couldn't come in because you have no confidence in him. Like, stuff like that. It's just, again, that's not fair to the young players who, like, you're the one that's getting paid more money. Like, there's higher expectations of you.
Yeah, well, with the walks, obviously, we've talked about this, just setting up disaster and then setting up more disaster when you have to force the zone, and it brings up the vulnerability of the pitcher, and that's the main thing that happens with Jake Diekman all the time, and it's just basically being on full display because he's the only lefty in that bullpen, because apparently lefty versus righty still exists, which it shouldn't, to be honest. It really shouldn't. And I understand that there's tons of pitchers out there where it's like reverse splits or whatever, but I mean, I need you to pitch to both. Which is another reason as to why losing Brooks Raley is such a loss. I don't think anybody is talking about it, how big of a loss Brooks Raley is. And to be honest, to not find another reliever like that in the future, because most likely with his contract and with how the pace he's going with the Tommy John surgery, he's going to be out for a year, more than a year. He probably pitched his last game as a Met. So to not have him back this year, and also probably not to have him back for the rest, like, ever, like, he's probably never going to be a Met ever again, it stings. It really does, because he's a lefty who can face both. He can face right-handed and left-handed pitchers. That's the main reason as to why I've liked him for so long and nobody talks about him, but why I've talked about him being one of the best, most versatile lefties in baseball. Jake Diekman's not one of those guys. A lot of things have to go right for him to actually, like, succeed. And so far it's been like, okay, well, you just need to be in Tampa Bay. Well, we're not Tampa Bay. We can't relocate to St. Petersburg right now. Can't happen. All right. Maybe Cohen has the money to do that, but that's not where he's going to apply the money as of right now. So it's either they let go of him or they just send him to the purgatory until Matt Gage is ready, or whether they call up Josh Walker, whether they call up or move Manaea to the bullpen or whatever. This decision has to be made on Jake Diekman. Mm-hmm. And I don't like where we're at right now between that decision being made, that we're still putting him in these situations, because we know that guaranteed, no matter what, 999 times out of 1,000 as of right now, that's how much he is not going to perform. He's not going to perform. And obviously we have a lot of these limited options in this bullpen right now because there's been a lot of injuries. Drew Smith has gone down, whether you like him or not. Brooks Raley is out. We have had a lot of inconsistencies with Edwin Diaz the past 2 years. Obviously, it's been a wild roller coaster there. So we need some guys to pick up the slack, and we can't really find those guys right now. We're running thin. And it's not like they can't survive with it, because David Stearns is good at finding these types of pieces. But, at some point, things come to an end. Things run dry. And right now, they're going into the depths of the depth. And the depth that is injured, that is banged up, that is overworked, that you need these veterans to step up. And when they don't perform, it's going to hurt you a lot. And that comes down to Jake Diekman and Adam Ottavino. Those are the two veterans in this bullpen. They've been here for a long time. They've had success before. Adam Ottavino a little bit more. They need to perform, and they're not performing. And that's the reason as to why they keep going to them, because one, the options are so few. And they also just don't have any consistency from anybody else that they can use in these high leverage situations. They do have one piece in Danel Nunez, who's been great in these high leverage situations, but he can't pitch every day. He can't pitch every day. I'd love to clone him 7 times. I'd love to, because he's the type of reliever you need, a guy who attacks batters, walks no one. In these high leverage situations with the great stuff that he has, and he's so young. So much upside there. But they don't have that right now, which stinks. And they do need to cut out some of the fat as to where it's not working. They got to try something new. Jake Diekman is one of those guys. I really, he's become the brace for impact type of reliever, where it's going to happen, so just let it happen. And you're slowly in your head going insane, but you expect it at this point. I mean, it's really, really bad. He's been horrendous. And I think that, the bullpen is just it from all sides, from all loose ends. It's been a disaster. And it's showing on the field. Absolutely. And I think there's a lot of people in here that are agreeing with, cut bait with Ottavino and Diekman. Too old, not enough upside. They're good in a lot of ways, but what we need right now, they are not going to provide it for us. And it goes without saying at this point, because it's on the field every single day. Anything else you want to add?
Yeah, no, I think one of the things that happened, as far as Diekman's outing the other day, is that when you bring him into a situation where he's coming in for Severino, and then he's having those runs score due to giving up a huge home run, all of a sudden Severino's ledger has 7 runs on it, and Diekman only has a couple. So I think it's stuff like that too, where it could kind of, when you're looking at it from the outside looking in, and let's say you don't watch the team all the time, you're like, oh, well, Diekman's ERA is only blah, blah, blah. But it's no, with these we actually look at the situations as far as what the outcome was based off where he came in and when he came out. That's where you kind of see the actual impact. And like I was saying before, is that the fact that he's getting worse as the year progresses. You're looking at May, a 2.89 ERA, June 6.75, July in 3 games, the ERA is 20. So it's why are you letting this continue and not actually taking action? And what's interesting is that as Bryce is getting ready to come back, Fujinami's getting ready to come back, you're going to need two corresponding moves. Now, I'm guessing one is probably the rookie, Eric Orze. I'm guessing he's one of the moves. Yeah. But then if you're calling up both of them, who's that second move? That's where things get interesting.
Danelle Nunez.
It's like, no, that can't happen. Like,
well, I mean, he's got options, you know? You got option down, you know?
But that's what I'm saying is that, like, are you going to actually give Budo a shot? You're going to leave Hauser. Obviously, Diaz isn't going anywhere. So then you're looking at probably Ottavino or Diekman or Garrett. So I feel like that's when you might finally see that decision be made. And listen, if you want to take out Orzi, Ottavino, and Diekman and you want to replace it with Gage, Bryce, and Fujinami, they're younger. I give it a shot. There's more upside. There's more stuff. I give it a shot.
Yeah, I mean, Bryce is not on the 40-man roster right now, so they might have to move around a little bit more there. Yeah. But Fujinami, I think, is on the 40-man corresponding right now. He's on the 60-day IL, so he was taken off of it. But he is probably like the next man up as to where the next healthy arm, if he does get healthy, and they bring him up.
And then Shari Foley, he's also hopefully back sometime after the All-Star break.
We haven't heard much. Yeah.
We haven't heard much, but what's the corresponding move there once that happens?
Yeah. I mean, you never know. I really hope that they piece this thing together, and there's some pieces that are here that are not here a week from now or 2 weeks from now. The Ottavino and Diekman are both on my list. I know that Ottavino hasn't really pitched much recently, but there's a reason for that. It's because he's been horrendous when we've needed him to actually perform. And I understand Mets fans want to, and I'll put this in another talking point, and then we'll move on. But I understand Mets fans want to go after Mendoza a lot, and I've not been one to really go after Mendoza, even though I mean, originally I did like the hire, and I'm not here to just completely defend him, but I really have come to a point where I'm done blaming the manager. We've done this so many goddamn times. Mickey Callaway's no good. Luis Rojas is no good. Buck Showalter is micromanaging now. Terry Collins, we got to get rid of him now because these guys are getting hurt and this is not lasting. And, I'm done blaming the manager. I'm done. It's either these guys who are veterans, Diekman, Ottavino. They have to perform or they don't win. And listen, I'm not saying that Mendoza should get off scot-free because I did not agree with him putting in Orzi to relieve Scott. I didn't like that. I think Adrian Hauser should have got in there. He should have. And it kind of does tell that it should have happened because I'm pretty sure the next time Brian Reynolds came up, he struck him out.
Yeah, he did.
He did. Yeah, and it's like listen, I understand that maybe they had a limit on him, and I get it. They had a pitch limit on Scott. They were limited in the options that they had because they had to use a lot of their bullpen in this series. But Hauser was available. Hauser can give you multiple innings. You don't put the guy. And listen, Eric Orzi, I don't see him as a future building block. I don't see him as that. But you don't put the rookie in that situation for his major
especially their major debut. Yeah, the debut. Do that. That's a tough one.
That's a lot. You can't do that. You just can't do that. You can't put him in a tie game. You just can't do that. Now, if it was already 8-2, then you put him in. Rest Hauser for any long relief outings that you have in the future, then you put him in. That can't happen. That just can't happen. That's where I think he messed up. And I'll admit it. Am I ready to fire Carlos Mendoza? No. Because how many goddamn times can we do this? Bad management, bad manager, bad general manager, bad president of baseball operations, bad this, bad that. The players never do anything wrong. The players can do no wrong. Even though we can throw separate guys off under the bus, but the guys that we like and we've seen do well 3 years ago, no, they were good once. They'll be good again. But then this guy's not good. But then we want to throw him off the face of the earth when he messes up once. I just feel like, I'm not defending what Mendoza's done every single time. It's just what I'm saying is, how many times is the manager the problem? How many times? I mean, we've seen mismanagement. Guys make mistakes, and we're going to get those mistakes. We talked about this before. You're going to get those growing pains with a first-year manager. At least he's been brought up to handle this position. Again, like I said, there's a difference between a first-year manager and a rookie manager. He's a first-year manager. Luis Rojas and Mickey Callaway were not brought up to these positions. So Carlos Mendoza was brought up to this position. He's just doing it for the first time. And you're going to have those growing pains. It's going to happen. The hand that he's been dealt, I think he's done a fair job not panicking, not completely just melting down like a first-year manager probably would. I think he's done a fair job. But, like, this is the reason why we won? This is the reason why we lost or won? Really? You scored 2 runs. You didn't. I mean, your top hitters did nothing in Alonso and JD Martinez. There's other factors here. The manager doesn't do as much as you think he does, and I think that is self-explanatory when you hear that it was more coming from the front office to limit the pitch count of Christian Scott. Like, I think that there's always somebody that is not the pure Met that you always have to blame. That always, I feel like, is the mentality of the guy that gets thrown under the bus. It's never the right, deepest of core problems that get addressed. And speaking of those deepest core problems, I want to move on to what I want to talk about next, which was news that we got yesterday. But anything that you want to add on Mendoza, on how things have been managed? I understand it's been tough. Mm-hmm. I get it. There's been moves that have been questionable. Mm-hmm. I get it. But it's like, how many times are we going to do this? How many times? I get it. How many times do we need to recycle through another manager? I don't want to have this discussion in the offseason of, is next year the last year that Carlos Mendoza manages ever again? I can't have this conversation every year. It just can't happen.
Yeah, I think there's been some things he's done that I've disagreed with. And, whether it's, I look at more things like lineup construction, rest days, things, matchups. Like, maybe he's not fully in charge of that. Like, maybe Stearns has some say, the front office has some say in that. So I won't totally criticize him. But what I will give him credit for, what I will applaud him for, is not being stubborn. I felt that was probably my main critique with Buck Showalter was I felt like it was a lot of like, well, this is what worked one time, so it's going to work
I think a
forever.
lot of that came from Epler. It did.
Well, maybe it came from Epler too, but I like that, obviously the where the Mets made the change, like, okay, players had their meeting, whatever, we did a lineup change. And it was looking a little better, but there was still something not quite right. So we changed it again, and then it started clicking. And with the bullpen, it's like, okay, we needed Nunez and long relief, and we were saying he's been so good, maybe you should try playing him in high leverage instead. And he's done that, like he tried to put, once the bullpen was starting to get a little healthy, we had Diaz, we had Sean Reed-Foley, he was starting to put Ottavino in more low leverage situations. Like, he's willing to make adjustments, he's willing to make changes and try out some new things if he finds that gives him the best chance. And, he's kind of just showing you that, like, he knows the bullpen sucks. When he pushes Christian Scott like that, or pushes some other pitchers.
And he's done a good job not throwing them under the bus. Like, he's done a really good job. Like that's what a leader's supposed to do.
He goes, I'm not supposed to do this to Christian Scott, but that's the only way I could win this game because these other guys are going to come in and blow it. Like, he has to, like, you would have to be ignorant and blind to not understand that the bullpen is just a flat out disaster. It really is. Yeah. I mean, because he brings a guy into a game like Diekman or Orze or whoever. And like we said, they can't get it out. They face their 3 batters and he has to come in and get somebody else. And again, it's not the first, second, third, 5th, 7th time it's happened this season. It's happening all the time. And, as a manager, you got to be thinking about, like, okay, what happened last time I did this? Like, that has to creep into your mind. And, he must go in there like, oh my gosh, I have to take this freaking guy out again. He couldn't get the job done. So it's like, what is he supposed to do? He's like, I need to win this game. I'm going to push I'm going to have Nunez go 2 days in a row. I'm going to have Diaz go 2 games in a row because I need to, this is my chance to win these games. And when I don't have them available, these are my other guys. They don't get the job done. What is he supposed to do? Push Nunez out there again? Like, what I found interesting for me was that you look at a team like the Nationals, who are worse than the Mets. They had most of their relievers work 3 days in a row. And in the case of Dylan Floro, with multiple up downs. That's something Mendoza never does. I don't remember the last time a reliever worked 3 days in a row. And, it's like he's trying to be like,
with the tax bullpen we have, which is impressive, to be honest.
And a short roster. The Nationals have 26 players. The Mets have 25. He's trying to be somewhat mindful of the long-term ramifications and not being like every game is desperate. Everyone needs to pitch every single day. Get over it. Not a Tom Thibodeau kind of approach to coaching, so it's like he's trying to like not kill the guys, so again, like you said, it's like with what he's been dealt, what he's been working with the walk problems and things like that, and guys not being able to go deep into games, like there's only so much you really could do when, like we said, it's just when you go down the line and you're like, do you have confidence in Diekman? Do you have confidence in Ottavino? Do you have confidence in this guy, that guy, and Festa and Tyler J and like all these guys? It's like, no, but these are who he has. This is who he has. So that's who he's been using. Like he's trying to avoid Diekman lately. He's trying to avoid Ottavino lately. But it comes down to the point where if House is working multiple innings and Budo's working multiple innings and Nunez working multiple innings, like eventually you're going to have to use the other guys that are on the roster. Like it's just part of the game. Like it's going to happen when you have no off days for like 13 straight games, something like that. Like you're going to find yourself in these kind of scenarios. So, I think that like I said, I don't agree with some of the decisions. I've made that clear. I've disagreed with some stuff. But I don't think he's a horrible manager. I don't think he's awful. Like he's done some things right.
I think he's a first-year manager. That's what I think he is.
He's a first-year manager, and I think that with a first-year manager and a team that's 11 games under 500, it's easy to quit. It's easy to give up. It's easy to throw your glove in the stands and say, we suck, it's over, sell off. They didn't do that. They fought back. They got back to 500, and they're still trying to make a run at it. So, there has to be some credit that's given to that. And when you watch other teams, this is where it stands out more to me. I talked about the Padres not hustling. I talked about the Yankees not hustling. I never see that from the Mets. The Mets always hustle. Even when they're down 6 runs, Alvarez is beating out a hit. Lindor's running hard on a ground ball. That something goes to the manager, and that's like there is something like we play for the manager. No matter how many runs we're down, we're still busted down to first base. When Jorge Lopez threw his glove into the crowd, Carlos Mendoza flat out said that is unacceptable. He said it flat out for everyone to hear it, and the guy was
before the
fired.
transaction even happened.
And the guy was fired immediately. He's showing you that he's a no nonsense guy. Now, I don't believe everything I've heard on WFN, but they said today that when Mendoza was the bench coach, he was the one on Gleyber Torres to be running out ground balls. That Mendoza was the guy who would get bothered if Gleyber was doing that. And obviously for the Mets, like I said, these guys are always running out ground balls. So, there is something that, and we might not see it. We may not see Mendoza ripping into a guy when they're not running, but what does he say in the clubhouse when we're not there? We don't know. Is he on players? I mean, there were some reports that he was mad at Diaz.
There's been a lot of hands-on, though. I have seen a lot of hands-on.
Yeah, I mean, and listen, I've seen him talk to Minaya when he walked 3 guys over the base loaded walk guys. He's like, what are you doing? Have confidence in yourself. And there's been times when he's done the mound visits instead of Hefner and just talk to the pitcher. Like he's done that. Like he's been active. He's been out there. He's fought when the umpires are doing disjustice and stuff like that. And one of the other things that I noticed too, I don't know if this is a personnel thing, but you remember when Buck Showalter, the Mets were an all-time record for hit by pitches, and they just kept showing his face and everything? You notice how that's not a thing anymore, where the Mets are just constantly getting plunked all the time? Is it because we don't have Mark Canha anymore, or is it just because, like, I don't know?
We're still top 5 in hit by pitches. We're still
we are, but it's not historic anymore.
Yeah,
and that's
the reason.
Like,
and that, to be honest, I think is the reason why people like Buck Showalter. Is like, because he makes funny faces when they get hit by pitches.
Yeah, but
what
a funny
I like
face
about
and
Mendoza
actual,
is that there's
like,
a lot of things that he's done well.
So I don't know.
I'm not saying that Buck is a horrendous manager. I'm not saying that he's, but this is the kind of the perfect placement of a guy like Carlos Mendoza as to where it's kind of like the perfect timing. And we've talked about this before, and I'm tired of throwing the manager under the bus when they have nobody else to grasp for whatsoever, when there's actual more real problems out there. The players still need to perform. I don't care if he messed up putting in Diekman this way or Ottavino. These guys are grown men. They're not kids. They're not rookies. They need to perform. I understand there has been moves that have been questionable. But with Mendoza, compared to a guy like Showalter, Rojas, Callaway, there's been a lot more moves that he's made where I'm like, I understand why he's doing this. I get it. I may not agree with it, but I understand it. There's been a lot of moves with other Mets managers where I'm like, why? Why is this a thing?
And he pinch hit McNeil the other day. It didn't work out with Torrens, but I think that shows, again, he's aware that, okay, this guy stinks. Even though we're supposed to play him every day in the contract, when it comes down to the nitty gritty, when it comes down to the game on the line, I'm not going to Jeff McNeil. He's shown also that approach too, to where he's not, again, just totally blind and just reserved and being like, I can't make my own decisions when I actually see what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, I really am not again, the result are the result, and the manager's going to take heat for it. It's going to happen when a result happens. But it's really hard for me to be like, okay, this is the reason as to why. It's Mendoza. Mendoza's the reason why. What he's built around, what he is, as we talk about leading by example, I like what he has established. I know there's a lot of coaching issues, and there's been a lot of mental mistakes made by the Mets that have cost them in the game. The defense is one of them. Walks, everything. But when you talk about mentality, what you're seeing on the screen, I mean, what you're seeing every day, I like it a lot more than what I saw last year with Buck Showalter, what I saw with Luis Rojas, where they basically look like a 26-man corpse. I mean, I think that it all really comes down to leadership and the guy running the show. I mean, it really has to be respected by the 26 players. And when he makes a move, yes, I get it. There's things that don't make sense, but you still need to perform. I'm tired of, there's only one guy we throw down under the bus, but everybody else is safe. Everybody else goes brushed under the rug, and the manager's the reason as to why, because he's the new guy in town. We don't know this guy. He got to get out of New York. I'm done with this. Enough. How many managers do you have to go through until you find the perfect one? You're not going to. It's not going to happen. Who's the perfect manager? Who? It was it Craig Counsell? Guess what? The Cubs are 7 games under 500. So
and the Brewers are still phenomenal without him.
The Brewers are still good. I mean, come on. This is ridiculous. It's just stupid. I can't. I'm not saying that he's perfect. I'm not. Because there's been moves that I don't like. But, this is the guy you got to throw under the bus? Him? He's the guy. He's the reason. He's the reason why we're walking batters. No, there's another guy the reason why we're walking batters. That's another story. He's the reason why guys are booting balls. That's not his job. He's supposed to be the leader in the clubhouse. That's not his job. It probably will have to end up being his job. He's probably going to have to be the pitching coach eventually, at the rate we're going. And he's kind of looked like that sometimes, where he's talking to Minaya, or he's talking to this guy, or talking to that guy. We've seen tons about it. Finally, a guy from the Yankees that Andy Martino loves, we like as well. It's about time, right? It's about time. When do we see Matt Gage? I'm hoping soon. That's when they pull the plug on Diekman, to be honest. We talked about that as well. And hopefully there is a move where they, make some bullpen transactions, of course. And, there's been guys who, they've eaten their salaries. And, I think that, Omar Narvaez is one of them, whether it's Joey Wendell. We really haven't seen them eat a pitcher's salary yet. I don't think so. We have not seen that yet. Lopez, yeah, was that like 2 million or something like that? Yeah. So Lopez.
Yeah.
Lopez, that's it.
I mean, different
But that's a
situation because
different
he's doing glove in the
circumstance.
crowd, but
Yeah. But they haven't. I mean, let's say they haven't eaten a pitcher's contract because they were just straight up bad. I mean, obviously that's a different thing. I mean, there's been plenty of examples, more good than bad, of as to why there's better leadership in that clubhouse. And I understand sometimes it looks bad. There's some things that bleed through. I get it. But like David Stearns has said, he hasn't. Again, like I said, he hasn't lied to you. There's going to be growing pains. It's going to happen. And whether you like it or not, I get it. Everybody wants everything to be perfect, but they're at 500 right now. Not everything is going to be perfect. We knew that this was going to be a 500 team at best. This was never an expectation as to where the ceiling, probably like 88 wins. This is exactly what we were expecting, to be honest. This is what I was expecting. Obviously, there were some things that I didn't expect, but we're rolling with it. It's a 162-game season. Not everything is going to be perfect. Even when everybody was riding high in 2022, this team's unstoppable. This team's going to win it all. There still were issues. No team is perfect. And that's something that you have to deal with. There's adversity involved in how the Mets have dealt with the adversity. The fact that they're at 500, to me, or one game under 500, is a miracle with what they've had to deal with so far. And I'm not sympathizing with the Mets because there's been a lot of shit that I have not liked. But what I'm saying is, when you talk about the situation day by day, this has been quite a roller coaster, and there's been a lot of chances that the Mets have had to just fold. They're still in the race right now. They're 2.5 games out of the wild card. Who knows if they get it? They're still in there. They haven't, there's been times where they look like they have given up, but they've bounced right back. It's been a roller coaster. We're all here for it no matter what, whether it's good or bad. So, now, speaking of a roller coaster, speaking of good or bad, let's talk about the All-Star game. And yesterday, it was announced that the All-Star reserves for the Mets only have one All-Star, which was expected by us, to be honest, with the Mets obviously being very bumpy this year. Not many consistent performances. There was only going to be one representative. Fine. Great. Other teams that have had great individual performances, they deserve more. Fine. Perfect. But the man who was selected as our only All-Star was Pete Alonso. Now, we all know about Pete Alonso. He's been a fan favorite for a long time. He's been here for now 6 years. He's been in the organization for 8 years, drafted in 2016. Instant fan favorite, the 53 home runs in his rookie year. Everyone loves him. But this year, let's just say it has not been all-star worthy. And everybody likes to make the joke. There's a meme that goes around all the time saying that what is a polar bear doing in Texas? Well, a polar bear is going to Texas because that is going to be where the All-Star game is going to be placed. Now, these numbers are a little bit skewed as compared to what he has done today, but this is pretty much the gist. Sub 800 OPS, a 340 weighted on base average, obviously to the league average, still a 125 weighted runs created plus, but offensive production has been way down this year. The strikeouts are not as high as people expect them to be. What has been a lot higher, which is not on here, has been a lot of ground balls, a lot of lack of sweet spot, not what we expected from Pete Alonso, and it seems like he just looks a little bit worse as compared to the production that you get, only getting 18 home runs, driving in 48 runs, being the main catalyst, and not to mention somebody who has been the leadoff hitter for a majority of the year has more runs batted in than him. Obviously, runs batted in is not the best way to look at offensive production, but for Pete Alonso, we need the results because he's in this contract year, and that's what we need from him. He needs to prove it. 39 extra base hits, walking at the same rate that he has for his career. Batting average and balls in play has been a lot higher than last year. It was one of the lowest of all year, but still has been underperformance. This will be his 4th career All-Star selection, and he has also announced that he will participate in the 2024 Home Run Derby. Now, I think there's a lot of angles you can go at this. Now, listen, the All-Star game, whatever. I really don't care about it. Obviously, everybody just wants the recognition of their players, of guys who deserve it. And it's perfect. And this is a comment from M-Easy, which we all know that he's hard on Alonso. He's been hard on Alonso before, and I don't blame him. Woohoo, Alonso in the home run derby, great. And that's kind of how I feel right now, too. That's really how I feel. And I'm going to give out my take as of right now. Just Pete Alonso alone. I'm not going to talk about who was snubbed or whatever, because we talked about this last episode. With Pete Alonso, I've always said he's not the smartest guy. He says stupid things. He does stupid things. But as long as he's producing, I don't care. I don't care what he does. The guy can wear a tutu for all I care. As long as he's producing in the Mets lineup, have at it. Do whatever you want. Do the stupid things all you want. But guess what he's not doing this year? He's not producing. He's not producing the way we want him to. He's still been a plus bat by league standards, but he still has not produced. He really hasn't. It's come to the point where I'm done. I've had it. I don't care about the career numbers. I don't care about what he's going to do for the franchise. I don't care about his individual stats. I'm done with the home run derby gimmicks. I'm done with the stupid comments. I'm done with it. It's either you perform or you try to get paid somewhere else. And that's how I kind of look at it. And the fact that that has kind of just been validated by the MLB is very frustrating. It is. Because there are guys on this team that deserved it over him. And listen, this is also a good point by M-Easy. He's cooking here. Peak has a Cespedes-like run in the second half and shut him up. I'd love to see him shut up because I want him to be the guy. I absolutely want him to be the guy because I know he can be. But when you see him, I don't care. I don't care about the home run derby. I don't care that he's an all-star, to be honest, because I personally don't care at all whether one of my players gets in. I care about the team winning because team hasn't won. So I don't care. The only all-star selections that matter are Edwin Diaz, because Edwin Diaz can do no wrong. But when you talk about, from a team impact standpoint, one of the main reasons as to why we've had inconsistency has been Pete Alonso this year. And whether you want to agree with that or not, whether you want to be a Homer fan or not, Pete Alonso has been a net negative when we've needed him. And for some reason, main reason as to why he is our only all-star, and I'll tell you why. It's not because that, he wanted to participate in the home run derby and the league wants money or whatever. I don't believe that because he participated in the home run derby once and he wasn't an all-star. That's happened before. The thing is that the all-star game is a popularity contest. And it's come fairly clear that Pete Alonso still has that popularity as a somewhat face of the team, that he's getting the nod over somebody like Francisco Lindor or Brandon Nimmo, maybe even JD Martinez, who's been good. I'm not mad that he got it. I really am not. I'm mad that when it all comes into light, Mets fans know the story with Pete Alonso this year. It hasn't been all glitter and butterflies. And you can look at it from just face value stat line. Sub 800 OPS. You don't want that from your contract year first baseman. Hell no. You don't want that at all. I don't. We need him to get it together. Whether anybody contributes or not, the lineup is deeper now, but we need Pete Alonso to produce because he's getting a lot of these opportunities with runners in scoring position. He's not contributing. So guess what? If it was only the reason as to why he gets into the All-Star game, the only way he'll win the home run derby, you know what, Pete? You better win the goddamn thing Because if you go out in the first round, it's going to get even worse. The pressure is going to get even more tough on you than it already is in your contract year. I'm done making excuses. I'm done. I can't do it anymore. When you perform the way that he has in the contract year, whether he's a homegrown sweetheart or not, you have to perform because the team hasn't won anything when you were performing. So that's the situation we're in. So the fact that that's being validated right now pisses me off. I don't care who gets the All-Star selection because I just see it as another game that doesn't count that my player can get hurt in, which I don't want to see. I kind of see it as that because every game is so precious these days. It's a lot different than what it was 5 years ago. That's how I look at it. Frank, I know that you're more in tune with the All-Star game. I get it. We always talk about and joke about who's the All-Star and who's not, the first half award or whatever it is. But I see it as validating a contract year for Alonso that has not been good. It hasn't been good for his standards.
Yeah, I mean, it's frustrating, just the sense that, like, I don't really have anything against Pete or whatever, but
Yeah.
it bothers me more so for Nimmo. I just think he's done so much, and it's like, Pete's been an All-Star before multiple times. This is third in a row, and it's like Nimmo hasn't gotten it once. You know what I mean? And he's been deserving of it multiple times, and health's gotten in the way or whatever, but as someone who like watches every single game, Nimmo is the guy that's getting the big hits. It's not Alonso.
Yeah.
Lindor's getting the big hits. It's not Alonso. So, with this whole like, oh, but there's too many shortstops at All-Star and there's too many outfielders and not enough first baseman. Like,
Christian Walker was better than Alonso.
Yeah, Christian Walker's have better than Alonso, and Christian Walker is in a walk year as well. He's also a free agent. So, the whole thing is just bizarre, honestly. I mean, it's a weird setup, the way it is. Like, everyone gets a representative, only a certain amount of positions, whatever. What counts more than what doesn't count? Like, I'm looking at like some of the outfielders that made it over Nimmo, and it's like Jackson Merrill, for example. I got nothing against the kid. I mean, props to him for being a young player and getting awarded it, but he got it for his batting average. He didn't get it. He's gonna have
a great career.
Yeah, like,
have a great career.
Nimmo had the better OPS, the better WAR, like, all this other stuff, but it's just batting average. Oh, well, Lindor, great WAR. I mean, top 5 F WAR, better than so many players, but the batting average is too low. Doesn't, like, so all the other stuff you do, it doesn't matter whether you impact winning games or not. Doesn't matter. If your batting average isn't good, you don't get it. But both these guys have better batting averages than Pete Alonso, but then he gets in over them. Oh, well, he has more home runs. It's like, so, like, is it still the 1920s where we only have like batting average and home runs to go off of, and we don't have access to all these other statistics, that those are only two things that matter?
Like when they didn't keep track of rebounds in the NBA or whatever?
Pretty much. Like, that's kind of what it feels like. It's like, if you have either a lot of home runs or you have a high batting average, you'll make it. If you don't, then you don't make it. So, and again, like, Walker's had a better year. So it's strange to me. And, maybe it's because like other guys on Arizona make it because of how amazing Ketel Marte is and what have you. But it's just a weird situation all the way around.
Yeah, and listen, I don't want to make this come off as, I despise Pete Alonso and I want him gone. Again, like I've said, I want Pete Alonso to be the guy, and I want it to happen. And I love Pete when he's at his best. I love him. But, it's not personal. It's just, I've talked about this before. Baseball needs to be looked at as a business. And the business has been failing. If he's not performing, we're in trouble. Because Pete Alonso is supposed to be the main source of offense. He just hasn't been that. And the fact that that's been validated now, he's also participating in the home run derby, which he cares about a little too much, in my opinion. It's just a bad look. And I really am just not. I'm not for it right now. I'm kind of done with it. At the first time he did it was great. He's a rookie. He's having a fantastic year. He's been a contributor for a long time. It's just, right now when he's not performing well, he's in a contract year. A lot of eyes are on him right now. You're also catering to the Boris client thing as to where, he's able to get a little bit more out of him because he's an all-star this year. It's another point you can talk about. But I mean, I just think it's just ridiculous. I really just, it's all fun and games. Winning heals all, performing well heals all, and he has not performed. So right now, the home run derby stuff, the antics, all that, it seems just annoying to me. It's all annoying. It all obviously goes with the situation, and right now I need the guy to perform, and he hasn't performed, and the fact that that's the only guy being recognized from our team who has not been the best player on this team, and I'll get into 5 players that have been way better than him. It's just I don't think it was the right decision. I don't care about the All-Star game. It's an exhibition game, but the fact that that's being recognized as to where behind the scenes, what Mets fans have seen, not great. It has not been a Pete Alonso worthy year. Now, speaking of great players that have been very solid for us, very good, I figured that I would bring back something that I haven't done in a while, and that has been, at this current point of the season, my top 5 of players. Top 5 of a category as to where these guys they're able to tear the list apart. You guys in the chat as well can give your opinion on it. And I think that this is the perfect spot to do it because you're at the halfway point. You're close to the All-Star break. And I'm going to give the Mets' top 5 players of the first half. Now, we've had quite a roller coaster of a year, so it's hard to keep track of what's going on. It's kind of just stringing things together. But I'm going to break it down the best way that I can with my top 5 players of the first half of the 2024 season. Now, some of these guys with their placement, maybe because of sample size as to why one guy is ranked over another guy, but as to why I have them in the top 5, that's a good recognition in itself. So, let's start off with number 5 that I have on this list. Number 5, I'm going to go with Harrison Bader. Now, when this signing was announced, there was some who liked it, and then there were some loudmouths from Long Island who didn't. Now, for me, I was pretty neutral in the fact, considering what Bader can do in the margins to help you win games, and the fact that I just don't believe that a bad one-year deal does exist. Now, so far this season, Bader has done pretty much just that, and then some in addition, anchoring the bottom of the lineup with a 723 OPS, a 107 weighted runs created plus, and 21 extra base hits in 261 plate appearances. Wow, I think I just had a stroke there. Okay, and this is also as well as landing in the 93rd league percentile in OAA, which is outs above average, as the perennial premier defender that he has been his entire career. Now, Bader has also done a tremendous job manufacturing runs at will, from stealing 13 bags, from posting a 394 on base percentage and a 133 weighted runs created plus in high leverage situations. Now, Bader is far from a star in this game, but he's been an all-around plus with the tools that he has provided so far this season, and he has been a really good value signing for the Mets so far. Now, going on to number 4, Dinel Nunez. This kid came out of nowhere, and he has emerged as one of the best relievers in all of baseball right now. The 28-year-old right-hander has been the Mets' most reliable arm in the bullpen so far this season. Although that doesn't really say much, he has posted a 2.93 earned run average, a 2.59 .9 fielding independent pitching and has struck out 33.3% of batters faced in 27.2 innings pitched. With the Mets bullpen having a notorious walk problem this year, Nunez has really had no part of that, walking 4.8% of batters and commanding a 30.3% called strike plus whiff rate. His ability to attack left-handed and right-handed hitters with a high 90s gas complemented with a slurve action arm slide slider and a mid-90s sinker with plus run has really been a game changer for an overworked relief staff, which is making him the only pitcher that has made my top 5 list. Now, as for number 3, I gotta go with the man, Mark Vientos. What a roller coaster it has been for Vientos. Constantly sent down to AAA, given limited playing time in the majors, and overlooked internally to fill the DH role in Queens. That has been a problem since the position was implemented in the National League. Well, this year, Vientos took the doubt personally and told every single Mets fan with unrealistic expectations to sign Shohei Ohtani to go fuck themselves. Taking a backseat to young Mets infielder Brett Beatty, Vientos finally was given the chance to play at third base this year and has run away with the job ever since. The 24-year-old aspiring slugger has been one of the Mets' best hitters this season, posting an .892 OPS, a 153 weighted runs created plus with 11 home runs and 29 runs batted in 170 plate appearances, also landing him in the league's top 15% in average exit velocity, hard hit rate, barrel rate, and expected weighted on-base average, cementing himself as one of the loudest young bats in the game. There's no decision to be made anymore. Mark Vientos is here to stay, and that other young third baseman is just going to have to deal with it. Number 2. JD Martinez. Now, in the last week of spring training, the Mets finally filled the DH void in the lineup by signing one of the best pure hitters of this generation in JD Martinez. While finally joining the team in late April, the 36-year-old veteran slugger has made a massive impact on and off the field, talking to young players under his wing while retooling and adjusting fellow veteran hitters along the way. JDM has also put up another great year so far in 2024, posting an .817 OPS, a 136 weighted runs created plus, with 25 extra base hits, 10 home runs, and 37 runs batted in 256 plate appearances. Although he may be on the older side, Martinez's bat has continued to defy the laws of aging, landing in the league's top 10% in average exit velocity, hard hit rate, sweet spot rate, and expected weighted on base average once again this year. He may have joined the lineup late, but the overall impact that Martinez has had to the Mets lineup in such little time has been life-saving to the offense. And to be honest, the only reason as to why I ranked him above Vientos is literally just sample size. That is about it. They both have been equally as productive. Either way, JD Martinez has been one of the main pieces as to a huge power jump to the Mets lineup and why they are top 5 in home runs. As for number 1, Tylor Megill. No?
He's just a troll, folks. This is all a troll.
That doesn't work? No? Okay.
Definitely
all right.
not.
Fine.
Not.
Brandon Nimmo, number 1. After a slow start to the year, the happiest man in baseball has turned in yet another great first half campaign. Now solidified in the 2 spot of the lineup recently, Nimmo has been on fire ever since, posting an .823 OPS, a 140 weighted runs created plus, with 14 home runs and a team-leading 55 runs batted in 371 plate appearances. Throughout all the ups and downs with his health, the massive franchise turnover in recent years, Pete Alonso's slumps, Francisco Lindor's streakiness, and Jeff McNeil basically forgetting how to play baseball, Brandon Nimmo has been Mr. Reliable and Mr. Consistent since his debut. especially in 2024, where Nimmo has come through more than any Met this season, posting a whopping 1,079 OPS with runners in scoring position and a 1,117 OPS in high leverage situations. Every year, Nimmo just continues to get better with his batted ball data, skyrocketing to some of the league's best percentiles, with career highs in average exit velocity, hard hit rate, barrel rate, and expected on-base average this season. He's even stole 8 bases, which is one less than his career high. Isn't that pretty impressive, Frank, huh? As still one of the most criminally underrated players in baseball, Brandon Nimmo continues my viewpoint from last episode by no fault of his own, that he is the best player in all of baseball to never be selected to an All-Star game. Listen, everybody got upset with Francisco Lindor not getting the All-Star nod as this massive snub. I love Lindor from the bottom of my heart, but who I believe was the biggest All-Star snub, that was Brandon Nimmo. Simple as that. So there it is, my top 5 Mets players so far this season. I think it's a perfect list. We don't even need to go over it, and we can just end the day. But Frank, I'll give you your opinion. Go ahead, tear it apart. What do you like? What do you dislike? Your top 5. Does McGill belong in number 1, or should it be Nimmo?
No.
What do you think? Let me know.
I think Lindor should be somewhere on this list. I feel like he's been... And it's not even so much statistics, but it's also what he's done leadership-wise. Obviously, with the players meeting, him initiating that and being a leader. From what you've heard from behind the scenes, him and Brandon Nimmo have really taken on the leadership role, holding team dinners, paying for team dinners. He's done a lot for this team, even if the statistics don't always show it. But ever since he's been in the leadoff spot in these past couple months, he's put together great statistics. So I think Francisco Lindor should definitely be in this top 5 somewhere. I love Mark Vientos getting the recognition. He deserves it. The other guy that I think has some consideration, and this isn't even my bias involved, but Francisco Alvarez. I feel like the win-loss record with him compared to without him, the difference in the pitchers with him compared to without him, what he's provided offensively, obviously as a young player, just knowing when to have mound visits with pitchers. I just feel like he's done so much in a small amount of time that
I agree with you. I agree with you there, but I
feel like
in terms of individual performance,
well, I think in the case of JD Martinez, Nimmo, Lindor, and Alvarez, they affect the other people around them in a positive way, besides just what they do statistically, and they just help make the other people around them better.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just talking about this in a statistical way and talking about individual performances. Obviously, Lindor started off very slow. With Francisco Alvarez, like I said, with sample size, he's been out for a lot this year. And that's the main reason that's why he's off here. He's in my honorable mentions list. Obviously, Marte being out for a while, he was also there as well. But also on both sides of the ball, he hasn't been fairly good. The whole situation with Marte is a little questionable, of course. I think that Alvarez deserves the recognition no matter what. He's a huge impact player here. And whether you no matter how you spin it. And, I think that he deserves to be on here as the top 5 best players on this team so far this season. I'm just talking about as to what went on this year and, what went on, not just years prior. I mean, obviously there's guys in a vacuum that are way better than Harrison Bader, but Bader's been a top 5 player on this team, and I can definitely stand by that, whether you like it or not, Frank. But I think
was Severino in consideration at all?
Severino was on there. I had Alvarez on there. I had Lindor on there. I think the slow start kind of bumped him off there a little bit.
What about Iglesias for the vibes?
Listen, if I do top 5 vibes, he's number 1. If I talk about top 5 vibes on the team,
that's a good Carson top 5 vibes guy. I'd be curious to see what
top
that
5 vibes guy.
Like.
I mean, Listen, I mean, that's probably the main reason as to why Jeff McNeil's still here. It's probably just for the fucking vibes, to be honest. So, Edwin Diaz
give
would be
good
on there
vibes
as well,
though, with the temper tantrums. That's not really.
I don't know.
Vibes.
I think that's very, very helpful. It's really helped him out this year. And listen, this is a good point from Ed Measy saying that Nunez has not been on here for long enough to make the list. He's pitched a lot, man. He has pitched a lot. He really has. Not as much as Reed Garrett, who also was in consideration, but to no fault of his own, he's kind of fallen off. That's another conversation we can give, as well as to where I think they're actually going to kill him. But he has pitched a lot, and he's been one of the saviors as to where, he's kind of like been the best reliever on this team this year. And listen, I think that, yeah.
I was gonna say, speaking of relievers, do you know who has the most appearances on the team?
It probably
in the bullpen?
is. It probably is Reed Garrett, right? No,
Jake Diekman. Jake Diekman has the most games. Wow. Reed Garrett is second, and he's beating this guy by 1 game, Adam Ottavino.
Sick. That's sick, man. And this is a point that came into the chat earlier from Project Ball, looking at at Nimmo's win probability added. Totally deserves it over Alonso, which I think is hilarious. Left on base. That's awesome. If you look at Brandon Nimmo's,
I wanted to get into this point as well, because what I found so interesting is that when Diaz came back, he was like, I'm going to do the same thing I was doing before. I'm not changed at all. I'm sticking with it. And both inspections came back clean. So it's like there's a punishment for Diaz. Yeah, but there's a punishment for Diaz, there's suspension. It really punches the Mets more than Diaz. But now that he's been proven innocent, there's no repercussions for the umpires that ejected him and MLB subsequently suspended him. Absolutely not. I still think there should be a one-time pass if a judgment call, because now they're just looking foolish. There was no reason for it. He did what he said he always did, and then said he was going to do the same thing again, and it's clean.
All that's missing is literally just for Edwin Diaz to do a vlog of himself saying, okay, this is what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
I'm going to do this, the same thing that I did the whole damn time. This is what I mean. I was like, okay, there's no way that Edwin Diaz would cheat. He's too good to just be somebody who just cheats. That's ridiculous. But Project Ball, obviously, that's what I was saying. Looking at Nimmo's win probability added, Brandon Nimmo, win probability added 3.54, which is the second most win probability added in the entirety of Major League Baseball among hitters, among position players. That's above Shohei Ohtani, Juan Soto, Marcell Ozuna, who's on a ridiculous tear, Aaron Judge, Jose Ramirez, Yordan Alvarez. Only guy higher is Jerickson Profar, who is like the only left fielder who's been pretty much better than him this season. So yeah, in my opinion, when you talk about impact, talk about overall performance, coming through when it matters, Nimmo, number 1, easily. He had the slow start, but I would put, Nimmo is 100% the number 1 player so far in the first half that they have had. In terms of sample size, and I think that it also comes to the fact where I think that he was the lone all-star. He should have been. I know a lot of people talking about Lindor. I get it. But what I also get is that he did have a slow start to the season, and they're talking about the season in the totality, whether they're looking at batting average or not. Brandon Nimmo was the snub. He continues to be a snub every single year. And he continues to be, whether I care about the All-Star game or not, the best player in all of baseball to not be selected to an All-Star game. No fault of his own. Let's just say that. Anything you want to add on this top 5? Anybody in the chat wants to add anything on the top 5? This is how I would look at it from the top 5 players of the Mets first half. Rounding it out with Harrison Bader, who's been great in the margins. Daniel Nunez, the only pitcher on here. Number 3, Mark Vientos, only there because of sample size behind JD Martinez with the impact he's made. And then, of course, number 1, Brandon Nimmo, who I believe should have been the Mets' only All-Star this year. Okay, so let's go into the Mets injury report, and then we'll get into studs and duds. We'll get out of here. Kodai Senga is set to make his second rehab outing tomorrow on Tuesday for AAA Syracuse. He is expected to pitch 50 to 60 pitches and is on track, according to Anthony DiComo, so who knows, but he has some inside sources here, to return to the Mets starting rotation in the last week of July or the first week of August, which is after the trade deadline. So he's going to be our trade deadline acquisition, guys, so get ready. Francisco Alvarez, he did not play on Saturday afternoon. He got rest after getting hit in the elbow by a 99-mile-an-hour fastball from Paul Skeens, but he did return to the Mets lineup on Sunday and DH'd for the last game of the series, and he will be wearing an elbow guard while hitting from here on out. Bryce Montes de Oca, remember that guy that just throws complete gas and is the most explosive arm you probably could ever see the Mets ever develop or draft? Yeah, that guy, he is continuing his rehab assignment as recovering from Tommy John surgery. Currently not on the Mets 40-man roster after being taken off of it with the extended period of time that he took out. Struggled a little bit, but did strike out 2 batters through 22 pitches. And he is still in Syracuse. Possibly we could see him within a few weeks, I'm hoping, but they're going to have to obviously add him to the roster to make those corresponding moves. And he obviously goes into the equation of somebody who maybe could be a high leverage piece if he can put it all together. So let's get to studs and duds. For this series, one player that played fairly well, deserves the recognition, and then one player who we would like to have some unfriendly words with. Let's just say that. We'll start with studs. Frank, who do you got for this series?
Yes, I have to give it to Brandon Nimmo. He had a lot of good games. You had the Friday game. He had a 3-hit game. I think it was one of the. I think it was one. No, it wasn't Friday game. It was the Saturday game. He had a 3-hit game. Sunday he gets the hit to put the Mets ahead. Originally, the first run, making it 1-0 before the Nunez Diaz thing happened. But then today he hits the big home run to tie up the game. He had 3 hits today. So he was constantly just being a contributing player, but also getting the big hits, like the go-ahead hits, the game-tying hits, the hits when they matter. He's been doing that, and despite not being selected to the All-Star game, that didn't stop him from being a really good player. It's not like, oh, I'm just gonna, it's not that he's gonna pack it or anything, but still, it's just like he's still after the the announcement, he's still going super hard. So I give him a lot of credit for that.
Yeah, there's really not much you can hate about Brandon Nimmo. There just isn't. It's really hard to hate this guy. I'm going to tell you, it's really hard to be critical of him because there's a lot of things that he has done right for us, and he just continues to get better every single year. And hopefully he does get recognized for that. Maybe he is an injury replacement. Who knows for the All-Star game. But again, like I've said, it's just another game that keeps us from maybe the player getting hurt, because we've already seen tons of players get hurt in games where they're not playing in a Mets uniform. So you just got to keep that in mind. So I'm just don't really care. But, the recognition, I do believe that he does deserve it. One of the most underrated players in all of baseball. For me, I'm going to go with Sean Manaea, 6 scoreless, back-to-back games that he has gone. He has gotten through the 6th inning. Very impressive. We've needed that volume from him, and we've gotten it recently. And we came to a point where we're talking about maybe moving into the bullpen because he couldn't handle with his pitch count getting so high earlier into games. But recently, it looks like we struck a nerve there because the last
Francisco Alvarez.
Yeah, Francisco Alvarez, that guy, pretty good as to what he does with these pitchers, and the impact that he makes. It's very noticeable, and Luis Torrens has been good, but star catcher is your star catcher. Let's get to duds. There's some that are really obvious that you can just throw in there. Frank?
Yeah, so this is a guy that we actually didn't talk about despite us going for 2.5 hours because he's no longer on the roster, but it just bothered me so much I still just have to get out of my system. That is Ty Adcock, who came into the game, which
remember when I said I don't know, it was like the first time that he pitched that with his type of like stuff, he could be a barrel machine.
Well, he was. The Pirates got to set a
was?
record. Yeah, the Pirates got to set a record, courtesy of him and company. And, you know, the thing with Adcock is that he's a guy that he got called up when Drew Smith got hurt. And I was like, oh my gosh, here's our opportunity. Here's our chance to just get rid of Drew Smith forever. And then Adcock ends up being worse. So he couldn't give me like my one wish of just eliminating Drew Smith from the Mets organization. So he couldn't do that. But you're already getting killed. You know, like you're already down by a bunch of runs. And for Adcock, you're just asking him to get through the 8th inning just so we could preserve our arms. You're down by 1 million. Just get out of the inning. He was so bad that you had to bring in your backup catcher to get the last out of the inning. And he did it on 3 pitches. And Adcock is getting destroyed. Just home run after home run. The Pirates are running out of fireworks. It's a big joke. And they set records because this guy can't, like, with a massive, he's down by 1 million. There's no pressure. Just get out of the inning. Just get a couple of outs. That's all they're asking. Even with you giving up bombs, just get a couple outs. And he couldn't even do that. They had to bring in their backup catcher to get a single out. That's embarrassing. And, you know, he goes back down to the minors, but he's still on the 40-man roster. So, you know, that's what we're talking about. Like, you claim Matt Gage, you claim an Adcock. Like, I hope Gage works out, but, you know, this is a guy that you claim, like, oh, maybe some stuff. No, not really. You know, so it's like, this is just another one of those guys where they've had bullpen struggles, they've had injuries, they call players up, and they're terrible, unusably bad. Even worse than the guys we already have who are already unusable. These guys are even worse, if that's possible. They're even worse. Yeah. So, you know, he's gone now, but it was just such an embarrassment to just the Mets organization and to the fans to have that happen against a Pirates team that isn't very good, especially offensively. Disgusting.
Yeah, that was not good. I feel like I get into these points with some of these relievers as to where you think that 1 out is like very, very simple, but like I mean, we had that sequence. What was it today? Where it was like there was like 5 runs that scored with 2 outs, right? I mean, it got bad. You know, I think that. You know, I get it. They're shorthanded. They're taxed. Tons of guys have gotten hurt. We've talked about this so many times, but it's like, I don't know. I think that there's some red flags with some of these guys they bring in. I think that I understand as to why they bring him. Like Ty Adcock, I think that he has fine stuff, but like there's problems there. Like I said, he could be a barrel machine with how some of his stuff complements each other. I mean, there's a reason as to why he was DFA'd originally. So, you know, there's the reason as to why. And those are the guys that you're going to get. So if you're expecting to trade for David Robertson right now or a trade for Kirby Yates, it's just not going to happen. Those are the guys that you're going to get. Now, this is somebody that I don't think I will ever put on the dud list ever again, but it was pretty noticeable. JD Martinez did not have a good series. And to be honest, I mean, I know he's going to get going again. I'm not really worried about that. But you know, a lot of ground balls, a lot of uncompetitive swings. I don't know if the heel of his sneaker that he had the early, I don't know if that affected him. If it did, what else is new? But I mean, he just did not have a good series, obviously, and one of the main reasons as to why a lot of our runs came out of premium in this series. We didn't score that much, and I get it. We were facing some really good pitching. We really were, because Pittsburgh, even without Jared Jones there, that Ortiz kid, not bad either. Mitch Keller, solid pitcher. Paul Skeens, explosive. I think that that is some young pitching that if that team gets better, you're going to eventually be facing them in these types of games where you need to win, and you're going to have to hit those guys, but they're going to have to come at a premium. And if you're looking at from what is it? If you're looking at it from that perspective, it just kind of just puts you in the situation as to where this team's not going to score 10 runs a game, and you need the bullpen to do their job, and they weren't able to do that, and that's the main reason as to why we ended up with a split instead of 3 out of 4. And, maybe that that loss determines something. Maybe it does. It doesn't. But I think they do have the tiebreaker on Pittsburgh, even if they end up in arms with that. But I think that, JD Martinez, it just was not a good series for him. I'm not worried because he's JD Martinez. Throughout his entire career, he's been like this. He produces, and he eventually will. I think that, it happens, whatever. And I do, when M-Easy does say this, Alonso and Vientos were worse than JD, I don't agree with that. I don't, because Alonso at least had like one good game against Skeens or whatever.
Vientos had 4 hits in the series. He had 2 hits today. He had one that went to the wall and was made a good catch by Jack Sawinski. And JD Martinez had 0 hits.
Oh, JD didn't even have a single hit in this series?
No.
No? Yeah. I mean, he had a bad series, but I was like, yeah, I know he drew some walks in some big spots. This is a good point. But I think that, there were some ugly ABs from Alonso and JD, but
no, there were some ugly ABs from Alonso, no doubt. He's the chasing.
I mean, they're
he's
facing
had some
good
bad
pitching,
chases.
but,
some bad chases.
Yeah, I mean, they're facing some good pitching, so the runs came out of premium. They were in every single one of these games until they weren't, especially in that first game. And they needed the relievers to come through, and it was a struggle.
And even that game, like it. When Severino was in there, like it was still a close game. And then once Diekman, and it's like that Friday game was an extreme, but it's kind of similar to today's game where, it's close. You have, you're facing a good pitcher, you had Skeens and you had Keller, and it's a close game. And then the bullpen comes in and it's a blowout, so it was kind of, and it was more extreme obviously on Friday, but it was kind of the same thing where they were technically in every single game going into the middle innings. And then as soon as the starting pitcher came out, it was game over.
Yeah. The floodgates completely opened, and we know what the glaring weakness is right now. I mean, there's a lot of, there's a lot of pieces that we hope that maybe help the situation. It's come to a point where we're like, maybe there isn't really a way to fix this, and maybe it's a lost cause. Maybe they're just spinning in circles, and they're going to continue to be at this 500 part because the bullpen kind of keeps them from doing that. It really does kind of show how much you need Edwin Diaz, but that's a different conversation of how he can shorten the game. Again, Edwin Diaz doesn't solve everything, but he does shorten the game. Again, I'm not really someone who can put that accountability on a lot of guys. I mean, I always will have my soft spot for Edwin. He did struggle in that third game a little bit, obviously doing an up-down. But, I think that when it comes to the Mets bullpen, they got to find a way to figure it out somehow in order to keep in this race, because they've had a few bullpen blowups that have knocked them down. They've been as short as a half game out of this wild card at one point. They're 2.5 games out of the wild card. So there's those 2 games that has been one of the difference makers as to why. And some point it's going to catch up to you. Right now they're still in a good position because there's not many good teams in the National League. But, at some point they're going to have to figure it out, and they're going to have to play 9 innings. They're going to have to finish 9 innings of baseball. They've done it better. I've talked about it as overall as a team that I didn't trust them to play 9 innings as a total team. That's a little bit different now. You're going to have the bullpen's going to have to finish this thing off, because, I mean, they've been one of the main issues as to why they've kind of been held back these last few weeks. To no fault of their own sometimes, but some of these guys have to step up. But other than that, we're going to finish it off here. We went over the 2-hour limit here. But there was a lot that had to say, a lot of outrage that went on in this week. A lot went on, but when you talk about it from a just overall winning standpoint, They got to do better than this. Let's just say that. Splitting with the Nationals, splitting with the Pirates. Yeah, they may be on like somewhat the same level of you as right now, but these are teams that you can take 3 out of 4 from. And right now, going into the All-Star break, you have games against Washington again and Colorado. 2 teams you can absolutely beat. Colorado is horrendous. So you have a chance to be quite a few games over 500 to go into the All-Star break to finally get the rest that they need. So you have a chance. Let's not say that they're not getting a chance, or they're playing tough teams. There's no excuses here. And when there's no excuses, we're going to criticize it if they don't end up winning a lot of these games. So thank you guys so much for watching, listening. For those of you who turned in live, for those of you who stayed for the entire episode, for those of you who popped in for a little bit, thank you so much. Make sure to subscribe to the Mets Weekly channel if you have not already. Turn on those post notifications to know when we go live, which is when this podcast is recorded on Sundays and on Thursdays. Today it was on Monday because of the 4-game series. Scheduling just kind of shifted a little bit. And of course, the audio version that drops at 9 a.m. the following day. Make sure to follow Mets Weekly on TikTok and on X. Follow everyone individually, from me to Frank to Andrew, who is not here. And of course, as always, let's go Mets, and we'll see you guys next time.